Access your free language gifts right now before they expire. First, the Talking About Age PDF Conversation Cheat Sheet. Learn how to say how old you are, ask others for their age, and over 20 age-related words and phrases with this cheat sheet. Second, learn how to say the most useful life skills, such as time management, negotiation, prioritizing, and much more. Third, must-know phrases for travel prep. This 1-minute lesson teaches you how to say pack, request time off, get a visa, and much more. Fourth, do you know how to sound angry in your target language? Learn to say whatever, none of your business, and much more with this bonus phrase list. Fifth, master 1,500 words with printable visual flashcards. Just download, print them out, and review as much as you want. These PDF flashcards are yours to keep for life. And sixth, free language learning audiobooks. If you visit the link below, we'll send our library of language learning audiobooks. Save them to your device and listen and learn. They're yours to keep forever. To get your gifts and language learning resources, click the link in the description below. Download them right now before they expire. Hi everybody, welcome back to Ask Alicia, the weekly series where you ask me questions and I answer them. Maybe. Let's get to your first question this week. First question this week comes from Vincent. Hi Vincent. Vincent says, why is it I've got you, not I've gotten you? Shouldn't we use the past participle? And does it mean the same as I got you in this context? For example, A, I forgot to bring my paper for today's project. B, don't worry, man, I've got you. I have some extra papers with me. Nice question. Okay, so your question asks, does this mean the same thing as I got you? And the answer is yes. We use I've got you and I got you in two cases, really. In your example, we have this situation where one person is helping another person, right? He's saying, I've got you, or I got you, here's some papers. I have some papers you can use, right? So that's like saying, no problem, I can take care of you, or I can help you. That's cool. We can say, I got you, or I've got you in this case. Both are totally fine, both are correct. Regarding your second question though, shouldn't it be I've gotten you? Don't think about the grammar for this expression. Think of I got you or I've got you as set expressions. This is kind of a slang expression, or you can think of it as an idiom. So don't worry about the grammar with this one. We use both I got you and I've got you to mean the same thing, and we use them both in this situation. In addition to this use, we also have I got you, and sometimes I've got you, used to mean I understand you. So when someone explains something to you and you want to casually express, I understand, you can say I got you, or even shorter, I gotcha, or even shorter, gotcha. You might also hear this used. So I got you and I've got you can be used in these two situations to mean either I understand or I'll help you. I feel that we tend to use I got you a little bit more often because it's shorter and it just kind of sounds cooler and casual. But don't worry about the grammar with this expression. I completely understand that you are thinking, there's an I've, and shouldn't it be past participle here together? I completely understand, but think about this expression, this phrase, as a set expression that you don't need to worry about the grammar for. So I hope that this answers your question about this expression, I got you. You can ask somebody else, you got me? You got me? I got you. Okay, great. Let's move on to our next question then. Okay, our next question is from Ko. Hi, Ko. Ko says, which sentence is correct? The stolen money was found by the police, or the money stolen was found by the police? Okay, very interesting question. So first, short answer, the first sentence is the better sentence here. The stolen money was found by the police. The second sentence sounds a little bit clunky, a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit unnatural. And there's a reason for this that I'll talk about in just a second. But the reason that the first sentence sounds good and sounds natural, and I would say is the correct sentence, is because a general rule to follow is when you want to include something that modifies a noun. So when I say something that modifies a noun, I mean something that changes the meaning of the noun. In this example sentence, our noun is money, yeah? In this sentence, we want to modify the noun by expressing that the money is stolen money, right? So we're giving some more information about the money, right? When we want to use other words to change the meaning or modify the meaning of the noun, generally the rule is to put those before the noun. So this helps our sentence to be very well organized. If we have a few nouns in one sentence and we have different modifying words, like different adjectives in front of the nouns, it becomes much, much easier to understand which nouns and which adjectives go together, because the adjectives or the other modifying words come before the nouns or whatever is happening in your sentence. So this is a general rule to keep in mind when you're writing sentences like these. Okay, so let's take a look at one more pair of example sentences, and I'll use these to explain what I mean about how we might use the other type of sentence. So, first sentence in the pair. The purchase gifts were put on the table. And second, the gifts purchased were put on the table. So there are some situations in which we might want to use the second sentence type here. As I said earlier, generally we want to put our modifying words before our nouns. So the first sentence here sounds most natural when we're just expressing one idea, right? The purchase gifts were put on the table. Great, no problem. But there are some situations in which we might want to use this second sentence type, and that's when we have two categories or two types of the noun that we want to talk about. In this case, we have the gifts purchased were put on the table. But what if we have some other types of gifts? What if we have some gifts that were made by other people? Or what if we have some stolen gifts? What if we have some gifts that were brought from other people's houses? What if we need to talk about those different types of gifts? So for example, we might say the gifts purchased were put on the table. The gifts made by other people were put in the hallway. The gifts stolen were put in the closet, and so on. So in these types of cases, when we need to talk about the different categories of noun, we might see those modifying words coming after the noun. But this is the type of situation in which you'll see this style of sentence construction. Generally, if we just want to say one statement, we'll put the modifying word before the noun, not after it. If you see the modifying word coming after the noun, it might be because that person is making like a list of different types of nouns, and they want to make it clear this one is different from this one, and this one is different from that one, and so on. So this is the situation in which you might see that second type of sentence used, when you need to make some specific details about different types of that noun very clear. But generally, if you want to say just one simple sentence as a fact, you should put the modifying word before the noun. That's a pretty good rule to follow in your writing. So I hope that this answers your question. Thanks for sending it along. Very interesting. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Wisley Babora. Hi, Wisley. I hope I said your name correctly. Wisley says, hi, Alicia. What is the difference between these two phrases? I promise you and I guarantee you. Nice question. Okay, so generally they have kind of the same core, right? We're saying that we are saying something is going to happen, right? We have a good chance that something is going to happen. But I promise you feels much more like a personal commitment, right? So we say, I promise you to your friend or to your family member, or maybe someone you're very close to, like your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your wife or your partner, whatever. I promise you something, right? So we're making a personal commitment to someone. When we say, I guarantee, it's also making a commitment, but we tend to use that more in like business situations. For example, a salesperson might say, I guarantee you won't find a better price. That's not so much a personal situation as it is a business situation, right? And if we said, I guarantee in our personal lives as well, it sounds a little bit more businessy, a little bit more like we're selling something to the other person. We sometimes use the word guarantee in our personal lives, and that's okay because we want it to sound like it's more of a business situation. Like, I guarantee you'll have a fun time at the party. Come on. We're trying to sell the party to our friend, right? And that's very natural. But generally, we don't use promise as much in business situations. If a salesperson says, I promise you're not going to find this price anywhere else, that might sound a little bit too close. I suppose it does depend a little bit on the salesperson. We might hear some people use it, but generally, guarantee tends to sound a little bit more like a business transaction. Also, guarantee means with 100% certainty of something. I guarantee you're not going to find a better price, or I guarantee this is the best product out this year. These mean 100% sure. Promise does not carry this meaning of 100% sure all the time. Sometimes it means, yes, 100% I will do this thing. But promise can also be a lot more open. So for example, we could say, I promise I'll come to the party with you. That means I'm making a commitment, 100%. I will come to the party with you. But we can also promise kind of more conceptual things, like I promise I'll never leave you, or I promise I'll work really hard this year, and so on. So these are kind of more conceptual, open things. So we tend to use guarantee with things that are a little bit more clear-cut and less emotional. So it sounds more like something we can express with data, with numbers, like prices, and so on. We wouldn't say to somebody like, I guarantee I'm going to work hard this month, or I guarantee I'm never going to leave you. It sounds too businessy. When we're talking about our emotions and these kind of personal connections, we tend to use the word promise more. When we want to talk about something that's a little bit more like numbers and data focused, we would probably use the word guarantee. So there is a little bit of overlap, like I talked about, like I guarantee you'll have a good time at the party. There is a little bit of overlap, but generally this is the difference between these two words. So I hope that this answers your question. Thanks very much for sending it along. Okay, that is everything that I have for this week. Thank you as always for sending your super great questions. Remember, you can send them to me at englishclass101.com/ask-Alicia. You can also find a link for this in the YouTube description. Please go there and send me your questions. Do not send them to me on YouTube comments or on Facebook comments or Instagram comments or Twitter, or I don't even know where you send all the comments, but I don't see them. There are too many comments out there on the internet, so please send them to the official question submission page where I will definitely see them. Go there now. Also, if you like this lesson, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Also, check us out at englishclass101.com for some other things that can help you with your English studies. Thanks very much for watching this week's episode of Ask Alicia, and I will see you again next time. Bye! Hi everybody, welcome back to Ask Alicia, the weekly series where you ask me questions and I answer them. Maybe. Let's get to your first question this week. First question this week comes from Adila. Hi Adila. I hope I said your name correctly. Adila says, when do we use above and over when we're talking about speed, temperature, and so on? Nice question. Yeah. So we use above and over to refer to too much of something, especially when we're talking about the speed of something or the temperature of something, as in your example. So to give a very, very common example of this, when we are driving in a car, there's usually a speed limit. Let's say in the USA, 60 miles an hour, right? So if you drive 70 miles an hour, you are going above the speed limit, or you are driving over the speed limit. We can use both of these words to talk about going beyond the limit. So if a police officer stops your car because you're going too fast, the police officer might say, did you know that you were going over the speed limit? Or did you know you were driving above the speed limit? Which means too much, right, in these cases. We do the same thing for temperature. So for example, let's say you want to talk about a really, really hot day. And let's say you want to describe like the hottest part of the day. You can say, the temperature today was over 30 degrees, like 30 degrees Celsius. It's really, really hot, right? You can say the temperature was above 30 degrees as well. So this means it is more than that. So this is what above and over are used to do when we're talking about like numbers, data, right? So of course we can use it to talk about how much of something, like a quantity of something. But when we're talking about these other concepts, like how quickly we are moving or how hot or how cold something is, we can use above and over to refer to beyond that. And of course, we can also do the opposite. We can also talk about things that are less than with the word under. So for example, temperatures were under 3 degrees today, or temperatures were under 0. We can also use below to do this. Oh my gosh, the temperature is below freezing today. It's also a very common expression. We do this with speed too. You were driving really, really far under the speed limit, or you were driving well below the speed limit. We can also use below and under in the same ways that we use above and over in these situations. So I hope that this answers your question. Thanks very much for sending it along. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Francis. Hi, Francis. Francis says, hi, Alicia. Could you tell me the difference between to rob and to steal? Thanks a lot for your work. Francis from Belgium. Yeah, okay, cool. Francis, let's talk about the difference between to rob and to steal. So one of the key differences here is in the grammatical structure that we use. to use these words, to use these verbs when we talk about taking something from someone else. So both to rob and to steal mean to take something that does not belong to you, right? You take something and you don't pay for it, and that's bad generally. So when we use these words, we have to think about the different grammatical structures that we have. So let's imagine a situation where a thief takes something from a jewelry store. We can use both steal and rob to talk about this situation, but we use different grammatical structures when we do this. When we use the verb steal, we typically have an object, which means the thing that was taken in the situation. When we use the verb rob, however, we're just talking about the two people or the two organizations that are involved in the situation. So here are a couple example sentences to show you what I mean. Let's focus on steal first. We could say, for example, the thief stole a necklace from the jewelry store. So here we have three pieces of information. Who stole it? The thief. We have the necklace, the thing that was taken, and we have the jewelry store. Where did it come from? We could also make a passive sentence here, for example. A necklace was stolen from the jewelry store by a thief. We could use this kind of sentence structure as well. However, when we use the verb rob, we don't talk about the specific thing that was taken. So let's take a look at some example sentences with rob that talk about the same situation. So we could say, for example, the thief robbed the jewelry store. This sentence tells us that a thief took something, or took many things, from a jewelry store, but we don't know exactly what. We could also make a passive sentence structure too. The jewelry store was robbed by a thief. This also tells us someone came to the jewelry store and took a lot of things. But in this sentence that uses rob, we don't see specifically what was taken. So if you don't know what was taken, if you don't know exactly what items disappeared, and so on, if you don't know the details of that, you might use the word rob, and the noun form is robbery. If, however, you do know the object that was taken or more details like that, you can say this thing was stolen, or a thief stole this thing from the store. So the grammatical structures that we use with these two words are different. Also, more generally, we kind of tend to use the word rob when we're talking about someone maybe doing something personally to us. Like if someone comes to you on the street and says, "Give me your bag," or something like that. I hope it doesn't happen. You might describe that as saying, "I was robbed," right? You kind of want to have that feeling of, oh my gosh, someone did this terrible thing to me, and rob tends to have a little bit more of that like personal feeling. If someone comes up to you and says, "Oh, someone stole my bag," it doesn't sound exactly the same. In that situation, it could be like maybe you forgot your bag at a cafe for a minute or so and someone took it in that case. But to be robbed sounds kind of more aggressive, like someone had a plan. They came to you, they were violent or something like that. So rob kind of has this more personal, kind of aggressive feel, whereas to steal could be a little bit more silent, a little bit more sneaky. So this is kind of the difference in feeling between to rob and to steal. But also keep in mind that the grammatical structures that we use when we use these two verbs are a bit different as well. So I hope that this answers your question. Thanks very much for sending it along. Good one. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Juan. Hi, Juan. Juan says, "Hello, teacher. I hope everything is fine." Everything is fine. Thank you. I have always been interested in knowing the degree of extremity of the word appalling. Could you explain, please? Okay, sure. So how extreme is the word appalling? So let's talk about this word. The word appalling, this is an adjective. We use this word when we feel extreme shock and surprise and usually like disgust. So we use this word, as you can probably guess, in very rare situations. When something very, very terrible has happened, like maybe war, a war crime, or someone has done something that's just unforgivable, we can describe that behavior as appalling. So, I mean, I suppose there are some situations where maybe appalling behavior might be different depending on your country, depending on your culture, but appalling behavior is usually something that is against like society's guidelines, against society's rules. It could be something that's really hurtful or harmful to other people. It could be something that's really, really gross, really disgusting. So there are a lot of different kinds of situations you might think of something as being appalling, but we generally use it to refer to something something that is very, very extreme. So we could also say it if someone is very, very rude to us, like you can't believe this person is so rude, you might call that kind of behavior appalling behavior. So it's for something that is more than expected in a bad way, right? So some other examples of using appalling. Right in the middle of the meeting, he called me a bunch of really rude insults. It was appalling. So this expresses someone's behavior is completely rude and it's really, really unexpected. That was appalling. Or maybe you might see a terrible story in the news about like a war situation and like hundreds of innocent people die. You might say, oh my gosh, this is appalling. How can anyone do this kind of thing? So appalling is used in those very extreme situations where something really unexpected or really, really unpleasant happens. So I hope that this answers your question. Thanks for sending it along. All right, that is everything that I have for this week. Thank you as always for sending your great questions. Remember, you can send them to me at englishclass101.com/ask-Alicia. Also, don't forget to send me your questions. You can find the link to the official question submission page in the YouTube description for this. Of course, make sure you send them to me there. I will not see your questions if you put them in the YouTube or Facebook comments or Instagram DMs. I will not see it. There's just too many. So please send it to the official question submission page. Also, if you like this lesson, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Also, check us out at englishclass101.com for some other things that can help you with your English studies. Thanks very much for watching this week's episode of Ask Alicia, and I will see you again next time. Bye! Hi everybody, welcome back to Ask Alicia, the weekly series where you ask me questions and I answer them. Maybe. Let's get to your first question this week. First question this week comes from Patricia Ahos. Hello, Patricia. Patricia says, hey Alicia, I want to ask about the pronunciation of live or live, because most commonly I hear it pronounced leave instead of live. Okay, so let's talk about this word spelled L-I-V-E. So we do have two pronunciations for this word depending on how it's used in a sentence. So when we use it as a verb, as in I live in New York or she lives in Australia, we use the live pronunciation, the I sound. However, when we want to talk about something that is happening in real time, like a live broadcast or maybe like a live concert, we use the I pronunciation. So live or live is what we use in American English. The leave pronunciation might be something that you hear in other dialects in other countries or maybe other regions have a certain pronunciation of live or maybe live that sounds like leave, perhaps. Like maybe she leaves in some place. I don't know exactly which region of the world you're coming from or what kind of English that you regularly listen to, but there's a chance that that could just be the way that the word is pronounced in that region or among that group of people. But in American English, we use live when we're talking about the verb form, the place where you live, and we use live to talk about something that is happening in real time. So I'm not sure, again, as I said, exactly what region or what dialect you're listening to a lot of the time, but this could be the reason that you hear a different pronunciation for this word. In American English, we do have those two, but it's entirely possible that a different region has a slightly different pronunciation, and that's why you hear this one a little bit more often. So I hope that this answers your question about this pronunciation. Thanks very much for sending it along. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Nidal Mostafa. Hi Nidal. Nidal, hi. Nidal says, hi Alicia, this is Nidal from North Syria. I would like to know what the difference is between these three words: vacation, holiday, and leave. Best regards. Okay, sure. So first, let's talk about vacation and holiday. In American English, we use the word vacation to talk about time off work or time off school. We usually use it in an expression like to take a vacation or I want to take a vacation. So when we say take a vacation, we mean we stop doing our work or we stop doing our school or whatever for a short period of time, maybe a week or 2 weeks, maybe more, and we do something else. Maybe we just relax at home, or maybe we travel somewhere, whatever. So this is called a vacation in American English. A holiday in American English refers to a specific day of the year or a specific period that is recognized around the country or maybe in a community as a special day. And on that special day, we don't have to work or we don't have to go to school. So a very, very common one is Christmas. So Christmas is a very, very common and very, very popularly celebrated holiday in the USA. So on Christmas, on the holiday of Christmas, lots of people don't have to go to work or they don't have to go to school. So a holiday is a recognized day where people can take the day off. Okay, so they can take a vacation on a holiday if they want to. So the holiday refers to the specific day or the specific couple of days in the year. It's on the calendar usually. I want to point out though that in British English, holiday is used in the way that American English speakers use vacation. So British English speakers will say he's going on holiday for he's going on a vacation. So British English and American English do have this difference. So on holiday means on vacation in American English. We use those in the same way, but they just have a different vocabulary word in British English. So if you want to speak British English, you should use holiday in that case. If you are studying American English, we use vacation in this way. Like he's going on vacation is the American English way to say that. So holiday and vacation, those are the differences in American and British English, and this is how we use the two in American English. But let's talk now about the word leave. Leave. So leave is a special type of kind of time off. Usually we see this in workplaces. We don't really see this so much in like study or school situations, though you may see it in really, really higher level educational situations. If someone is getting maybe their PhD, for example, or they have some postdoctoral work they're doing. So leave means you take a certain amount of time off for a specific life event. So a very common example of this is maternity leave. Maternity leave means the time that a person takes off work to care for a newborn baby. So when someone is pregnant and they are preparing to have the baby, they may go on maternity leave, or they may take maternity leave, which means time off specifically to prepare for the baby. There's also paternity leave, which is for fathers. So traditionally, maternity leave refers to time off for the mother, and paternity leave refers to time off for the father. So these types of leave are very, very common. It's maybe a few months or maybe a couple years, depending on the country or depending on the company that you work for. So leave is usually kind of a set time period for a specific purpose. So you might see this kind of leave, or you might also see in like really, really like high-level university situations, there's a kind of academic leave that people can do to go to another country and study for a while. There are kind of different types of leave that you might see. But this is a bit different from vacation or a holiday, right? It's like you're taking time away from your work or from your studies for a specific reason, for a specific period of time. So usually also leave is related to getting money. So that means that you take time off from work to, for example, care for a new baby, and you get some money while you do that. So your company has a plan to give you money while you take care of your new baby, for example. So leave typically means that you also continue to get paid while you do that thing that you're doing away from work. So these are the differences between vacation, holiday, and leave. I hope that it's become a little bit clearer for you. Thanks very much for sending this question in. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Darwin Valdez. Hi, Darwin. Darwin says, what is the difference between history and story? Oh, interesting question. Okay, so history refers to things that actually happened. So when you read a history textbook, for example, it's something that actually happened, something in the past that truly happened. So this could mean wars. This could mean that someone made something amazing in the past, whatever. History is a record of things that actually happened. A story, on the other hand, does not have to be real. So you see stories all the time, like in movies and TV and books and short pieces of writing on the internet. Stories do not have to be real. Sometimes the story is real. Sometimes it is not real. Like when you watch, I don't know, a crazy science fiction movie or like a crazy fantasy movie. That's not a real story. But you still see characters and you see the things that happen and you hear maybe gossip or whatever. You hear and see all of these different things as they happen. And it's fun and entertaining, right? We enjoy stories. But not all stories are true. So we can talk about the things that happened in history. We can tell stories, so we can talk about those things that happened, and those are historical stories, which means that's a story that refers to something that really happened in history, yeah? But we can also talk about things that did not happen, and we just do it for fun, right? We tell stories about things all the time. So for example, when you talk about your day, you come home at the end of the day and you talk with your family member, or you talk with your partner, your roommate, whatever. You share about something that happened that day. That's a story, right? It's part of your personal history, right? It's something that happened to you. So you can consider it your personal history, and one story is like one thing that happened to you, one kind of scene. You can kind of imagine it this way. So stories don't have to be true. In fact, we make up stories all the time, just for fun, right? To tease our friends, to tell lies, to entertain other people, whatever. So stories don't have to be true. History, on the other hand, is a record of things that actually happened, okay? So I hope that this helps you understand the differences between history and story. Thanks very much for sending this question along. All right, that is everything that I have for this week. Thank you, as always, for sending your great questions. Remember, you can send them to me at englishclass101.com/ask-Alicia. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, so that you can get all of our updates. If you want to send me a question, please send it to me at the official question submission page. There's a link for this in the YouTube description. Don't send it on social media somewhere. No Facebook comments or Twitter, whatever. Make sure to send it to me on the official question submission page. I will definitely 100% read your question there. So please send it if you want to participate in this series. I hope that you do. Okay, so that is it for me for this week. Make sure to come and check us out at EnglishClass101.com for some other things that can help you with your English studies. Thanks very much for watching this week's episode of Ask Alicia, and I will see you again next time. Bye! Hi everybody, welcome back to Ask Alicia, the weekly series where you ask me questions and I answer them. Maybe. Let's get to your first question this week. First question this week comes from Francis. Hi Francis. Francis says, hi Alicia, is there any difference between these two sentences? 1, I'll give you a lift to the airport. 2, I'll pick you up to the airport. Thanks, Alicia. Yes, there is a big difference. The second sentence is wrong. I'll pick you up to the airport is not an expression that we use. Your first sentence, I'll give you a lift to the airport, is another way of saying I will give you a ride to the airport, which means I will put you in my car, or you will get in my car and I will take you to the airport. So I'll give you a lift to the airport, or I'll give you a ride to the airport, or I'll drive you to the airport. These are all expressions that we use to talk about this. On the other hand, your second example sentence, I'll pick you up to the airport, is 100% incorrect. We cannot say pick up to a location. We do not use the phrasal verb pick up with the preposition to. So pick up to sounds like kind of, I will get you and take you to a destination, right? But we cannot use pick up in this way. We can talk only about using pick up from the location. So we talk about the place from which we collect someone or something. So we can say, I'll pick you up at the airport. So this sentence means that someone has arrived at the airport, their plane has landed, and you meet them in your car or your motorcycle, whatever. You meet them, collect them, and go somewhere else. I'll pick you up at the airport. That sounds like you start at the airport, meeting there, and go somewhere else. I'll take you to the airport sounds like we will meet somewhere else and I will collect you and we will go to the airport together and you will go away, right? So these are two kind of opposites. You can think of this, yeah? So like I will take you to versus I will pick you up, right? So to pick someone up somewhere means to collect them from a location. We always use the at preposition there. So I'll pick you up at the supermarket or whatever. Or I suppose you could use the preposition by, for example. I'll pick you up by the supermarket means I will pick you up near the supermarket, right? But we can't use pick up to. We can't talk about the destination with the phrasal verb pick up. So I hope that this answers your question, and I hope that it makes it easier for you to take people places and pick them up in places too. Thanks very much for sending it along. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Daniel. Hi, Daniel. Daniel says, which one is correct? What for or for what? Oh, interesting question. Both can be correct, actually. We use what for and for what in very casual conversations. We often use these to just respond to a request. Like if someone asks us for something and it's kind of surprising or it's kind of shocking, we might respond with, what for? Or for what? This is another way of saying for what purpose or why do you need that thing. We use both of these expressions and they mean the same thing, for what or what for. I guess for me personally, I probably use what for more often than for what, but this could depend on the person. Both of these really mean why or for what purpose. So let's look at kind of a crazy example of a situation in which you might use one of these expressions. Let's say your coworker comes to you. You work in a regular office job. Your coworker comes to you and says, you know what, I really need you to order $1,000 of wood. You might be like, what for? Like, why do you need that? So you might respond to something like that with what for or for what? Like you need to know more about this situation in order to make a decision, right? That's a really shocking, kind of surprising request to come from your coworker. You work in an office. Why do you need $1,000 of wood? It's crazy, right? So this is obviously a very extreme and kind of crazy example, but you kind of get the idea. When you're really surprised or shocked about a request, you can use what for or for what to show that you're shocked or surprised, one, and also to ask for a reason for something. So you can use both of them. Again, as I said, I tend to use what for more often than for what. You might also hear people just say, why? So you can use any of those to kind of express that shock, surprise, and request more information at the same time. So to answer your question, both are okay to use. But just remember, these are used in casual situations only. Don't use these in business or polite situations. Use it when you're close to the other person. So thanks very much for an interesting question. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Next question comes from Flo. Hi, Flo. Flo says, hi, Alicia. I'd like to know the difference between don't take it for granted and take it for granted. Thanks. Okay, yeah, let's break down this expression. Usually we use the expression don't take it for granted. Don't take something for granted. So to take something for granted means to have the expectation that something will always be there, something will always be available. We use this expression a lot in our interpersonal relationships, often in like a romantic relationship. So for example, we have maybe like a boyfriend and a girlfriend, and they've been together a long time, and they start to expect certain things like he'll always be there or she'll always be there, for example. After a long time, they have this expectation that this person will always be there, that person will always be there, I don't have to try anymore, whatever. We call this situation, for example, one person taking the other person for granted. So they assume or they have the expectation this will always be here. I don't need to do anything in order to keep this relationship in this example. So when we say don't take it for granted or don't take someone for granted, it means don't expect the other person or the other thing will always be there or always have that same status. So you might use this expression to talk about your job maybe, or you might use it to talk about maybe your community, something that you like in your community. So the idea here is that we shouldn't expect that things are just always going to stay as we like them. We also have to do some work or to put in some kind of effort in order to keep the relationships that we have or in order to keep the environment or the community that we enjoy. So usually we say, don't take something for granted, which means don't expect that something will always be that way and stop trying. On the other hand, you also talked about the expression take it for granted. So there's no don't in front of it. We generally do not use this expression without don't in front of it. The only time that we use it without this don't is generally when we're talking in past tense about someone's experience. So for example, in the relationship example I talked about before with like the boyfriend and the girlfriend, for example, the girlfriend expects the boyfriend will always be there in this example situation. You might describe that with he was taken for granted, or she took him for granted. We might use it in that sense, meaning she expected that he was always going to be there, even though she wasn't putting in any effort, for example. So this is a situation where we might say the expression without don't in front of it. But generally, anytime that you hear something was taken for granted, or he was taken for granted, or whatever, it generally refers to a very negative situation where somebody expected something of the other person without putting in any effort. So this is an expression we typically use with don't in front of it. Don't take something for granted, or don't take someone for granted. Don't expect something will be there if you don't put in efforts to get it. So I hope that this answers your question about this very interesting phrase. Thanks very much for sending it along. Okay, that is everything that I have for this week. Thank you, as always, for sending your great questions. Remember, please send them to me at englishclass101.com/ask-Alicia. There is also a link for this in the YouTube description. Please send it to me there. Do not send me your questions in YouTube comments or in Facebook comments. There are way too many. I cannot check all of your comments, so please, please, please send them to the official question submission page. I read 100% of your questions there, and I really do choose from that list. So please send them. I am always looking for your questions. Of course, if you like this lesson, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Also, check us out at englishclass101.com for some other things that can help you with your English studies. Thanks very much for watching this week's episode of Ask Alicia, and I will see you again next time. Bye! Hi everybody, welcome back to Ask Alicia, the weekly series where you ask me questions and I answer them. Maybe. Let's get to your first question this week. First question this week comes from Francis. Hi Francis. Francis says, "Hi Alicia, could you tell me the difference between these two sentences? I will finish my homework by 8 p.m. I will have finished my homework by 8 p.m. Thank you so much from Belgium. Okay, Francis, nice question. Yes, I will finish my homework by 8 p.m. I will have finished my homework by 8 p.m. So these both communicate the same idea, right? We are expressing with both sentences that 8 p.m. is the point in time by which the homework will be finished. So both sentences express this. So that could be like a time before 8 p.m. It could be exactly at 8 p.m. But both sentences express that 8 p.m. is the deadline. So in that sense, they have the same meaning. They communicate this same idea. The difference between the two isn't so much about the meaning necessarily, but rather when we might say these sentences. So what do I mean by that? Let's take a look at the first sentence so you can see what I mean. The first sentence is, I will finish my homework by 8 p.m., right? So when would you use this sentence? Probably you would use this sentence if someone comes to you while you're doing your homework and asks you, when are you going to finish your homework? Do you know? You'll probably say, I'll finish my homework by 8 p.m., I think, right? So that's kind of like you're reporting your status, right, to the person in the moment. I'll finish it by 8 p.m. That's kind of your idea, your estimate at that time, right? However, the second sentence we probably would not use in the same way. If someone came to you and said, hey, when are you going to finish your homework? We probably would not respond to this question with, I will have finished my homework by 8 p.m. That doesn't sound natural. And this is for a couple of reasons, actually. One, we often tend to use that future perfect expression when we're talking about kind of two future points in time, and we need to show the relationship between those. So I'll come back to this point in just a second. Two, you're kind of offering this key point in time as the deadline, 8 p.m. So the person comes to you and says, when are you going to finish your homework? And they really just want a time, right? And you're expressing, I will have finished my homework by 8 p.m. This sort of focuses more on the action that's happening, actually. I will have finished this task by 8 p.m. It sounds a little bit odd for these two reasons. So let's break down the first reason that I talked about. When we use future perfect tense, it's usually to talk about a relationship between a future point in time and another future point in time. So when we say something like, I will have finished this task by this time, it's often because we want to talk about another task or another activity in relationship to that. So here's an example situation where you might want to answer with, I will have finished my homework by 8 p.m. Let's say your friend is inviting you out for drinks and they say, hey, are you free tonight at about 9:30 or so? Do you want to join us for drinks? You might say, oh, I will have finished my homework by 8 p.m. so I can join you. In this example situation, it sounds much more natural to respond with, I will have finished my homework by 8 p.m. because you're showing the relationship between two activities. If you just respond with, I will finish my homework by 8 p.m., it sounds kind of strange, like you're not kind of communicating that you understand there's another activity you need to be thinking about. So in these situations where you kind of have more than one activity in the future to think about, those are situations in which we would use this kind of future perfect expression to talk about a future deadline. So in this situation, I connected my ideas with so. I said, I will have finished my homework by 8 p.m., so I can join you for a drink. This sounds very, very natural because we're expressing the timeline, we're expressing that we understand the invitation from the other person, and we're also explaining, this is about my timeline. This is my estimate for my activities as well. So this is the reason that it sounds a bit more natural here. So again, as I said at the beginning of this answer, the two sentences communicate the same idea, right? They communicate the 8 p.m. deadline. The difference here isn't so much about the meanings that are communicated with these two sentences, because they both communicate that 8 p.m. is the deadline, but rather the difference here is when we would use these and in what situations it sounds most natural to use these. So to recap, the simple future sentence, I'll finish my homework by 8 p.m. sounds much more natural if someone just asks you, like, when are you going to be done with that thing, right? Just a very, very simple report or a very simple estimate. The future perfect example sentence, however, sounds much more natural when you're expressing it in relationship to another future activity. So I hope this helps you understand the differences between these two sentences. Future perfect can be a really tricky tense, to be sure. Just keep in mind that we use it when we're talking about relationships between two or maybe more future tense actions. Thanks so much for sending this interesting question along. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Chathu. Hi, Chathu. I hope I said your name correctly. Chathu says, what is an intransitive verb? Meaning and examples, please. Okay, yeah, great question. This is a very basic grammar point that's very important to know. So let's take a look. So English has what's called intransitive and transitive verbs. There are these two types. So a transitive verb is a verb that takes an object. An intransitive verb is a verb that does not take an object. So what does this mean? We need to break down some basic sentence structures to understand this. Let's start with a transitive verb. I said a transitive verb is a verb that takes an object. So the object means the thing or the person that is receiving the action of the verb. So let's look at a really basic sentence like, I ate pizza. We have the subject, the person doing the action, me. So I ate is my verb, past tense, I ate, and pizza is my object. This is the thing receiving the action of the verb, right? So in this case, pizza is the thing I ate, right? So this is a very, very basic example of a transitive verb, a verb that takes an object. An intransitive verb, however, is a verb that does not take an object. So that means we can use an intransitive verb in a very, very short sentence that's just subject and verb. So for example, I slept, right? So we don't have any object in this position. There's nothing receiving this action, the verb sleep, right? So this is an example of an intransitive verb, a verb that does not take an object. Some verbs can be used transitively and intransitively. This means that it's okay to use that verb with an object and without an object. So my earlier example, the verb ate, is also an intransitive verb, or we can use it as an intransitive verb. So I gave the example sentence, I ate pizza, right? We could also just say, I ate. And the sentence is okay. What did I eat? We don't know. It's not important in this situation. But we can use this verb in this way. This is an example of a verb that is both transitive and intransitive. We can use it in both ways. So intransitive verbs don't take objects. I gave you one example of a very common one, sleep, and of course there are many others. So for example, cough, like he coughed, or fly, like the plane flew. We don't need an object for this verb. So there are many, many different intransitive verbs, and of course there are also lots of verbs that can be used transitively and intransitively. So I hope this answers your question about what an intransitive verb is, and also answers what a transitive verb is as well. So thanks very much for sending this question along. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Yoonhoo Jung. Hi Yoonhoo. Yoonhoo says, when should I use Invitation. Okay, invitation. So we can use invitation for physical things and for abstract concepts. So basically, the most basic use of the word invitation is when someone invites you to something. So like someone says, come to my party. You can say, thank you for the invitation, right? So the noun form of invite is invitation. You can say, thank you for the invitation to the party. So this is just a concept, right? So it's a verbal invitation, right? So someone asked you, with their words, to come to a party. This is an invitation, right? So we can use it in this sense, just as a concept. We can also use the word invitation to talk about a physical document. So for example, a wedding invitation is a document. You receive a document in the mail, like usually a very nice document in the mail, that says the date and time, the people's names, other notes, and this is called an invitation as well. So it's a formal way to invite someone to something. So you can use invitation in terms of the concept and in terms of a physical piece of paper or a physical document that requests your attendance somewhere. Another place that you might see invitation used is in calendars and scheduling apps. You might receive like an invitation to join like a Google something, like a Google Meetup or like a Zoom Meet or something like that. You might receive an invitation. Again, the concept is the same. Someone is requesting your attendance. Someone is asking you to come to this digital meeting. So all of these can be used to mean invitation. Basically, anytime somebody says, do you want to join me or do you want to come? You can understand that as an invitation. So I hope this helps you understand how to use this word in a couple of kind of more modern ways that we use this word in apps and other scheduling tools. So thanks very much for sending this question along. All right, that is everything that I have for this week. Thank you, as always, for sending me your awesome questions. Please remember to send them to me at the official question submission page, which is englishclass101.com/ask-Alicia. That is a very long URL, so please check the YouTube description for the link. Make sure to send me your questions there. Don't put them in YouTube comments. Don't put them in Facebook comments. Don't send them to me on Instagram. I will not see them because there are too many. So please send it to the official question submission page. I will definitely read your question and maybe include it in the series. So make sure to do that. Also, if you enjoyed this lesson, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, check us out at englishclass101.com for some other things that can help you with your English studies. Thanks very much for watching this week's episode of Ask Alicia, and I will see you again next time. Bye! In this video, you'll learn 10 of the most common words and phrases in English. Hi everybody, my name is Alicia. Welcome to the 2000 Core English Words and Phrases video series. This series will teach you the 2000 most common words and phrases in English. Each lesson will help you practice and review what you've learned. You can also get the full list right now at englishclass101.com. Click the link in the description to access more example sentences, create your own flashcard decks, and finally, master English. Okay, let's get started. First is allergy. 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 This word is a noun, and allergy is a negative reaction that you have to something else. So for example, people might have an allergy to a certain food, to a certain kind of plant, maybe to an animal. So this causes a reaction in the body. For example, maybe your eyes get really, really watery, or you start to sneeze a lot. These are examples of allergies. For example, allergy to pollen. Allergy to pollen. Allergy to pollen. Next is boarding pass. Boarding pass. Boarding pass. Okay, a boarding pass is a piece of paper or a digital pass that you can show to airline staff when you need to get on a plane. So a boarding pass includes your flight number, your seat number, probably the gate that your flight will take off from. So a boarding pass is necessary to get on a plane. For example, boarding pass for the flight. Boarding pass for the flight. Boarding pass for the flight. Next is education. 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 Okay, education is a noun. Education refers to the things that we learn, usually in school, or as well in our lifetime. So when we talk about going to school, we talk about receiving education. So that's all of the different kinds of knowledge and the different experiences that we have as kids becoming adults. And then after that, we have other forms of education, other forms of knowledge that we get from books, from our jobs, from our hobbies, and so on. So there are many different ways to receive education or to get education. Here's an example phrase. Education and training. Education and training. Education and training. Next is English. 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 Okay, so English is the language that you are learning right now with this video. So English is a very interesting language. It pulls inspiration from many other languages and countries and cultures around the world. With English, we have kind of interesting spellings to think about, interesting ways to pronounce words, and there are many different dialects to consider in English as well. Here's an example sentence. Mr. Suzuki teaches English. Mr. Suzuki teaches English. Mr. Suzuki teaches English. Next is law. 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 So, law can refer to two different things. Law can refer to a country or a city or a state's rules. Their formal rules are called laws. And when we go to school to study those things, because we want to become lawyers, we also refer to the study of those things as law. For example, law school, law school, law school. Next is flute. 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 So a flute is a musical instrument. A flute is played in this position. So we use our two hands next to our face to play the flute. It's a long kind of tube-shaped instrument that makes a high-pitched sound. This is very, very common in orchestras and in symphonies and in maybe high school bands as well. For example, silver flute. Silver flute. Silver flute. Okay, next is IT department. IT department. IT department. Okay, an IT department is a very, very common section in many companies and many organizations. The IT here stands for information technology. So usually the IT department is responsible for helping people with their computer problems, with other technology problems, media problems, and so on. For example, call the IT department. Call the IT department. Call the IT department. Next is business trip. Business trip. Business trip. A business trip is a trip that you take specifically for business. So that means it's different from a vacation. When you take a vacation, it's just for fun. When you have a business trip, you have to go somewhere for work. And maybe you have some fun while you're there also. But the main purpose of your travels is work or business. For example, go on a business trip. Go on a business trip. Go on a business trip. Next is marketing. 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 Marketing is another very common and very important section of many companies and organizations. Marketing refers to the process of creating things that will help sell products or sell goods and services to other people. So that can mean creating advertisements, it can mean writing things on a company website, and so on. For example, marketing department. Marketing department. Marketing department. Next is popular. 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 So, popular means something that many people like. So when something is popular, that means that a lot of people think that it's really, really good. Be careful not to confuse popular and famous. When something is famous, it means many people know about it, or maybe many people know about a person. When something is popular, it means lots of people know about it and lots of people like it. So we can talk about people in this way. We can talk about places like restaurants, and we can also talk about things with the word popular. For example, popular man. Popular man. Popular man. Let's review. I'm going to describe a word or phrase in English. See if you can remember it. Then repeat after me, focusing on pronunciation. Ready? Do you remember how to say the medical condition when your body has a negative reaction to something outside of you? For example, dust or pollen or a specific food or maybe an animal. This is a noun. Allergy. Allergy. And how to say the piece of paper, or the digital piece of paper, you use to get on an airplane. Boarding pass. Boarding pass. What about the word we use to talk about the process of gaining knowledge, usually in school, but in work situations as well? Education. Education. Do you remember how to say the name of the language I'm speaking right now? English. English. Let's try the word we use to talk about the rules and regulations in a country or in a city. Law. Law. What about the word we use for the long musical instrument we play by holding it to the side of our bodies with this motion? Flute. Flute. Now, let's see if you remember how to describe the department or the section of a company or a school that helps people with their technical problems, like computers. IT department. IT department. Another one. What about the expression we use to talk about traveling somewhere for the purpose of a meeting or perhaps to give a presentation? Business trip. Business trip. Do you remember how to say the department that deals with sharing information about a product or service in order to get people to buy that thing? Marketing. Marketing. And finally, do you remember how to say the word that describes something that many, many people enjoy? Popular. Popular. Well done! In this lesson, you expanded your vocabulary and learned 10 new useful words. Click the link in the description and sign up for free at EnglishClass101.com to get access to the full list of vocabulary you need for daily conversations. You'll also get example sentences, custom flashcard decks, and more learning resources. See you next time. Bye! Welcome to your 2000 Core English Words and Phrases video series quiz. Each week, we'll release a video teaching you new vocabulary. The following week, you'll be given a quiz so you can test your progress. Click the link in the description. Let's learn and review the words for your test. But if you're ready, it's quiz time. Allergy. Boarding pass. Education. English. Law. Flute. IT department. Business trip. Marketing. Popular. Great job on completing the quiz. If you didn't get 100%, don't worry. Just check out the previous video again to review the expressions we covered. But before you go, we have a free gift that you don't want to miss. Use it to expand your vocabulary. Click the link in the description below to download our English ebook with the core 2,000 words for daily life situations. Hi everybody, my name is Alicia. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about phrasal verbs and some expressions that use the verb move. Let's get started. Let's start on this side of the board with this group. The first phrasal verb I want to talk about is move in. Move in. To move in means to go to a new residence. So we use move in to talk about the new place you are going to live. You might also hear this phrasal verb used for a new office, and this is used in cases where you don't change jobs, but the location of your office changes. For example, I moved in to my new apartment last week. Or, when are you moving in? So you'll notice when you use this phrasal verb, we follow move in with to, and then the new location. The new location goes here. I'll talk about the opposite in just a moment. You could use to my new office here as well. So we moved into our new office last week is another way you might hear this used for workplace changes. So to move in means to go to a new residence or a new workplace. The opposite of move in is move out, to move out. To move out means to leave a residence and go to a new one. So this is like commonly used with move in, but we use move out when we're talking about the old place we lived. For example, I have to move out of my place next month. So this of my place, this place means the place where I live. This is a casual expression that means the place where I live. I have to move out of my place now next month. So notice here when we use move out, the old location, the old residence is the focus. When you use move in, you'll use the preposition to move in to and your new location. With move out, it's move out of and the old location. So please keep in mind these small preposition points. Move into, move out of. Another example, I think the neighbors moved out. I think the neighbors moved out. So in this case, you don't need to include any other information. We understand from context, the neighbors in this case left their residence. So some neighbors, some person or people near our place moved out of that residence. So you could say, I think the neighbors moved out of their apartment, but because we're using this phrasal verb, we already understand it means they left their residence. So this is move in and move out. Okay, let's continue to move on to something and move off something. So move on to something and move off something can both be used to mean to change topics. So I could have said now, after my explanation of move out, I could have said, okay, let's move on to the next item. So move on has a couple of different meanings, as I'll talk about in just a moment. But this one is to change topics, to change topics. So we use move on to something when we want to talk about going to a new topic. We use move off, again, when we want to talk about the old topic, So some examples. Let's move on to the next topic on today's agenda. Let's move on to the next topic on today's agenda. So that means I want to go to the next thing. So I don't want to focus on the last thing, I want to focus on the next thing. Let's move on to the next topic. Let's move on to is the preposition we use, followed by the noun phrase. The next topic on today's agenda. Another example, I want to move off of this topic for a minute. I want to move off of this topic for a minute. That means this topic, the current topic of discussion, is something the speaker wants to stop talking about. The speaker wants to go to a different topic. So they say, I want to move off, and the preposition is of. I want to move off of. So again, as with move out, when we're talking about leaving something behind, we use of. So move off of this topic to go to another one. So you'll probably hear these uses in discussions, perhaps in presentations and meetings. So it's less about like two-way conversations, but often when many people are discussing a topic, we'll use move on and move off. So presentations, conferences, discussions, and so on. Okay, so with that in mind, let's move on to this next one, also move on. So I've kind of hinted at it here. We use move on to mean to continue to the next thing in a series. So this is slightly different from this one. It means like to change topics generally, like to move on to another topic means to change topics. We can also use move on to mean to continue to the next item. So in this case, I have many different phrasal verbs. I want to move on to the next one, which means I want to continue to the next item. So for example, please move on to the next slide. Please move on to the next slide. So a slide means one image or one part of a presentation. So like a PowerPoint slide, for example, is one piece of information in a presentation. The second one here, though, is quite different from the one I introduced here. To move on is also used to mean to overcome an emotional challenge. We usually use this word when we have a breakup, so a romantic relationship ends, so a marriage ends, or you stop dating someone. So it's often related to romance or very close relationships like that. You might also hear it used when someone passes away, someone dies. So there's some kind of emotional challenge someone needs to deal with. The process of overcoming that and continuing on, like continuing forward to the next step in life, we use the word move on to describe that. For example, it's hard to move on after a breakup. It's hard to move on after a breakup. So that means it's hard to overcome emotional challenges after a breakup. But move on is much easier to say. So we have this use of move on as well. All right, let's continue to the next one. The next one is move over, move over. In most cases, you will probably hear move over used as a command. It means to shift to a side, so to move over, move over. It usually refers to a side shift, so to one side or to another side. For example, move over. I have no place to sit. So that means please shift yourself, please shift your body to a side. I want to sit. I need a place to sit. So this is used as a command. Move over, move over. Another one, can you ask her to move over? So that means can you ask her to shift to the side? We usually use move over when we want someone to make space for us. We need a place to sit or maybe to put something down. So we use it as a command to ask someone to move. Okay, next is move in on, move in on. Move in on means to approach something, usually to attack that thing or that person or to control that person. So it has kind of a negative nuance and it's often used in dangerous situations or maybe in risky situations. For example, the police moved in on the suspect. The police moved in on the suspect. So in this situation, there's likely one suspect and many police officers. So the image here is that the police, as a group, slowly perhaps approached the suspect to attack or to try to control the suspect. So that means it's kind of like a risky situation. So there's usually some kind of like cautious behavior we need to think about. So to move in on someone, to move in on something is also possible. We tend to use it in news reports or military reports more often though. Another example, we're planning to move in on the enemy tomorrow. We're planning to move in on the enemy tomorrow. So this might be like a military expression. So again, there's an enemy, or it could be a group of people who are the enemies in this case. And again, it has the feeling of surrounding or approaching carefully before attacking or before trying to control something. So this is to move in on someone or to move in on something. Okay, on to the next one. The next one is make a move, to make a move. To make a move means to take action often or typically in a romantic situation. You're going to make a move. You might sometimes hear this used in career situations when something is a little bit risky. You decide to take action. You might say, I'm going to make a move and apply for this promotion or something like that. But in most cases, we use it for dating situations and other romantic situations. For example, did you make a move on your date last night? Did you make a move on your date last night? That means, did you take action? So this phrase is quite vague. It's not clear, like, what action was taken. We don't specifically know. So this could be different from person to person. It usually refers, though, to showing someone your true feelings. Like you try to get closer to someone in some way. So to make a move usually means like to be the first person to try to make a relationship very close. So to make a move is kind of a special thing. It's kind of an exciting, risky thing too. Another example, the person I'm seeing made a move last night. So this is past tense. The person I'm seeing made a move last night. So that refers to the person on a date with the speaker trying to take action. That person wanted to become closer to the speaker, so they did something, maybe tried to hold hands or kiss or hug or something else. So it refers to some sort of vague action. We don't know exactly what, but the person the speaker is seeing wanted to get closer to the speaker. So we can use make a move to describe this and other situations too, where you try to make a move to like a higher position in your company or perhaps just some other kind of closer or higher level relationship. You want to try to take action to do that. You can use make a move to describe it. Okay, the next one is move to or move toward, move toward. So this means to go in the direction of something or like to go to a specific place from another place. So some examples. let's move toward that building. Let's move toward that building. So if you're in a group of people, you're trying to go someplace, you can say, let's move toward that building. So it doesn't mean we're going to go to the building. It means the direction I want to go in is near there. So let's go in that direction. You might not go to the building, but let's go toward that building. Let's go toward that building. Here, he's going to move to the restaurant. So let's meet him there. If you use move to, it has the feeling of going from one location to another location. So for example, maybe there's a man we're going to meet. Now he's at a cafe, but he's going to move to the restaurant. So let's meet him at the restaurant. He's here now, he's going to move to the restaurant, so let's go there. It sounds like someone is changing locations. So move to has this feeling. If you say he's going to go to the restaurant, it doesn't have that feeling of someone changing locations. So sometimes you might want to kind of explain that. You explain that someone perhaps is moving or is changing locations, maybe just for the purpose of meeting you. So sometimes it's nice to express that clearly. You can do that with move to. So keep in mind also, move to means going to actually at the specific location. Move toward simply means moving in the direction of something. It doesn't necessarily mean that thing is the destination. It just means that's the direction you want to go in. Okay, next is get a move on. To get a move on is a set expression. We usually use it in this present tense. We don't really use it in past tense. We don't really say gotta move on. We sometimes use it in future tense though. This means to begin going somewhere. So you typically use this just before you leave a location. For example, it's late. We should get a move on. It's late. We should get a move on. At someone's home for a party, it's late. We should get a move on. We should begin to leave. We should begin to go somewhere else. Another example, hurry up. I gotta get a move on. So I gotta means I have got to, I have a responsibility to. Hurry up, I gotta get a move on. That means hurry up, I need to begin to leave, so I have to go somewhere else. So get a move on is a set expression, which means to begin leaving or to start leaving. Okay, next is to be on the move. To be on the move means to be in the process of moving. You can use this to describe animals, to describe people, to describe pretty much anything that moves on its own. So for example, look, the elephants are on the move. So it sounds like they're in the process of moving somewhere. Maybe we don't know where, but right now this group of creatures is in the process of moving. They're on the move. Another example, according to police, the suspect is on the move. So that means the suspect is currently now moving. So we don't know where, but we just know that there is movement. So this expression shows someone or something is in the process of moving, but maybe we don't know the destination, we don't know the exact place, we just know they are moving. We use on the move to describe that. So they are on the move, or the suspect is on the move. Okay, the next two are kind of a pair. They are move up and move down. So to move up means to shift something up in this motion. It can also mean to go to a higher position at work. So like to move up in your career or to move up as in your company. For example, please move up to the next place in line. So if you're waiting in line, to move up in line means to go to the next position, to move forward, to go forward in a line, to move up. In this example, I'm excited to move up in my company. So again, it's like going forward. It's going to the next step in something, to move up. So generally, this sounds like a very positive thing, to move up in a company. One more, move down then is the opposite. We don't really use it so much to talk about moving down in a company because it's not as common, I think, as moving up. We use this to mean to shift something down or to go down as well. For example, can you move the light down a little bit? Can you move the light down a little bit? Just means move it from a higher location to a lower location. So to move something physically down. Or she moved down the street in her car. So if you imagine a street, a person in a car going down the street just means like this motion. So we can use to move down the street as well if you want to. In this case, like she went down the street in her car is also totally fine. You just might hear some people use move in this case too. So these are some phrasal verbs and some expressions that feature the verb move. Of course, there are some other expressions. If you know about them, please feel free to leave them in the comments of this video. If you have any questions or comments, or if you want to practice making some example sentences with these expressions, please feel free to do so in the comment section as well. If you like this lesson, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and check us out at EnglishClass101.com for some other things that can help you with your English studies. Thanks very much for watching this lesson, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye. Hi everybody, my name is Alicia. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about 3 ways to use the word enough. Let's get started. Okay, first, let's take a look at this use of enough. We can use enough to express an adequate amount or number of something. So adequate means an appropriate amount or an appropriate number of something. With this use of enough, we use a noun with the expression enough or not enough. So let's talk about how we make this, and then we'll look at some example sentences and some example questions that feature this use. So first, to make this use of enough, we follow this basic pattern. We have enough plus a plural noun. So this plural noun part is important. Here's your hint for this section right here. If the noun you want to talk about is a countable noun, use the plural form. So that means the noun form with the S at the end. For example, markers or teachers and so on, the S ending. If the noun is an uncountable noun, you don't need to make any kind of change. For example, money or time. There's no S at the end of that. So keep in mind, we need to use the plural noun form. When I use an uncountable noun, though, there's no change to it. So that acts as the plural form also. To make it negative, we add not in front of enough. So not enough noun or just enough noun. So let's take a look at some examples that use countable and uncountable nouns and see how we can express this. So here's a sample situation. Let's say 10 people are coming to a party. We are planning the party, or maybe we are the host of the party. So in this situation, there are 10 people we need to plan for. Here are the items we have for the party. We need to make some statements using enough with this information. So first, we have 10 cups. 10 cups. How can we use enough with this information? We could say, we have enough cups. We have enough cups. Cups is a countable noun. It's in the plural form here. Using enough here means there's an adequate amount or an appropriate amount. We have 10 cups for 10 people. It's correct, in other words. Okay, let's look at the next one. 1 cake. 1 cake. We could say, there's enough cake. There's enough cake. So there is enough cake. So again, enough before our noun expresses an adequate amount of that. Next, we have 8 chairs. 8 chairs for 10 people. So we can express this issue with there are not enough chairs. There are not enough chairs, the negative, not enough chairs in the plural here. If you want to express this to the person you're planning the party with, you might say, we don't have enough chairs. We don't have enough chairs. So this we don't have or I don't have enough is a very common expression when planning something. Finally, 1 bottle of wine. 1 bottle of wine. 1 bottle for 10 people. So there's not enough wine. There's not enough wine. So wine is an uncountable noun. We don't say wines. You could, I suppose, say bottles of wine. There are not enough bottles of wine. But if your noun is just wine or another uncountable drink, you can use this pattern. So we use not enough to express that the amount is not adequate or not appropriate. Okay, great. So with this, let's next look at some questions. How can we make questions to refer to the amount or the number of something? First, are there enough countable noun in plural form? Are there enough somethings, in other words? For example, are there enough cups? Are there enough cups? This is a yes or no question. So in this example, 10 cups for 10 people? Yes, there are enough cups. Or if there are only 5 cups, you could say, no, there are not enough cups. So we use this pattern for a countable noun in the plural form. The next pattern is also a yes or no question. Is there enough uncountable noun? Is there enough uncountable noun? So, is there enough juice? Or we saw earlier, wine. Is there enough wine? Again, we have a simple yes or no answer. Yes, there is enough wine, or no, there isn't enough wine, or no, there isn't enough juice. So keep in mind, depending on the noun, uncountable noun or countable noun, we do need to change the beginning of the sentence, are or is. Okay, finally, the last question pattern I want to look at is, do we have enough noun? Do we have enough noun? This is a very basic pattern you can use when you're planning something. This is a great and very useful question. For example, do we have enough food? Or do we have enough drinks? So in these situations, you don't have to worry about countable or uncountable nouns. Do we have enough noun? This is a really easy one to remember if you're not sure if it's a countable or an uncountable noun. You can just ask, do we have enough of that thing? And that'll work just fine. Okay, so we've talked about this way to use enough, to express an appropriate amount or an appropriate number of something. Let's move to use number 2, which is very different. So, when we use it in this way, we express adequate quality of something. So in this example situation, or in this section of the lesson, we're going to look at using adjectives and adverbs with enough. In part 1, we looked at using nouns with enough. So let's compare what's happening here. So in this situation, in this case, we use adjective or adverb before enough, okay? In the first one, we saw enough before the plural noun. So notice the position changes here. To make it negative, we just put not before the word. So not adjective enough, or not adverb enough. So let's look at some example sentences and break them down so we can understand what they mean. First, my grades were good enough to get a big scholarship. My grades were good enough to get a big scholarship. Here we have good, an adjective, before enough. So this sentence means my grades were of a quality adequate to get a big scholarship. Or in other words, I had such good grades, I was able to get a good scholarship or get a big scholarship. So this good enough shows that it was the appropriate level, or in my case, my grades were of a good quality. So I got the scholarship. Let's look at the next example. This blanket isn't big enough. This blanket isn't big enough. Here we have a negative, is not big enough. This means, in other words, the blanket is too small. That's like the opposite sentence here. Here we have big, adjective, before enough. In this case, not big enough. So we're saying the size of the blanket is not adequate. The size of the blanket is not adequate. But that's a very unnatural way to say this. Instead, we say, this blanket isn't big enough. It's too small. Okay, the next one. That boat is large enough to live on. That boat is large enough to live on. So again, we have our adjective first, and then enough. So this expresses the boat, the quality in this case is the size. It's large enough to live on. So again, these are all sentences that relate to the quality of something, the quality of someone's grades, the size quality of something in this case, or both of these cases really. And the next one is about music. The music isn't loud enough. The music isn't loud enough. So at a party maybe, you can't hear the music. You can say the music is not loud enough. So in other words, the volume is not adequate. I can't hear it, maybe. The music isn't loud enough. Finally, let's look at an adverb example. Sometimes we use this with adverbs too. Here's a good one. That car isn't driving quickly enough. That car isn't driving quickly enough. So here we have quickly, our adverb, in front of enough. So again, we're talking about the quality of the driving in this case. In this case, it's the speed, right? So the car is maybe not moving quickly, right? Or the car is not moving at the same pace as the other cars. So we can express that with that car isn't driving quickly enough. Okay, let's look at some questions now that use this grammar pattern. First, is that restaurant nice enough for a date? Is that restaurant nice enough for a date? Notice this also, like we saw before, is a yes or no question. Is that restaurant nice enough? Nice enough for a date? That means, is the level of niceness appropriate for a date? So, is this restaurant good enough is another way to say that. Is that restaurant good enough for a date? Is it okay for a date? So you can use nice enough to show you're thinking about the quality of the restaurant. Next one. Is it cold enough to need a coat? Is it cold enough to need a coat? This is a question about the weather. Cold enough, where it here means the weather. Is the weather cold enough to need a coat? So is the level of the cold high enough to need a coat? So again, a yes or no question, like, yes, you should bring a coat, or no, it's warm outside. So you can answer this with very simple responses. Finally, do you think this dress is pretty enough to wear to a wedding? Do you think this dress is pretty enough to wear to a wedding? So this question is asking about the level of prettiness of the dress. So is this dress pretty enough to wear to a wedding? You can say, no, choose something more formal, or yes, it looks great. So again, all of these are about the quality, kind of the level of quality or the level of the adjective or the adverb before enough. So this is how we use enough with this grammar pattern. As I said before, remember, the position of enough is different from the first part we talked about. The position of enough is after the adjective or the adverb here, and it's before the noun in the first section. Okay, let's take a look at the last part for this lesson. The last use of enough is to express an adequate degree of an action in this case. So you can see maybe that we are looking at different parts of speech with each of these categories. First was nouns, second was adverbs and adjectives. So maybe you can guess this part will feature verbs. So when we use enough in this pattern, we use verb plus enough. Verb plus enough. And in these patterns, the verb can take many different verb forms. We don't always have to use present tense or past participle or the progressive or whatever. We can use a lot of different verb forms together with enough. So we'll see some examples of this. Of course, to make it negative, we put not before the verb. So let's take a look at these example sentences and break down what's happening here. First one, make sure to drink enough water every day. Make sure to drink enough water every day. Here we have drink, just the basic infinitive form of the verb. Next we have enough. Make sure to drink enough water every day. This means make sure to drink an adequate amount of water every day, or an appropriate amount of water every day. Maybe 8 glasses a day, I think it is. So make sure to drink enough water every day. The next one, here we have a negative. I didn't sleep enough last night. I didn't sleep enough last night. A very common expression, maybe. So we have the negative form of the verb here. I did not sleep enough last night. This means my sleep was not at an adequate level. Okay, next one. We've worked enough today. Let's go home. We've worked enough today. Let's go home. Here you can see we have a perfect tense pattern, right? We have worked enough today. This is a past participle verb. But again, we have this enough after it. We've worked enough today. That means the level or the amount of our work that we did today is adequate. Let's go home. Let's be finished for the day. So we can use this verb form as well. One more. He eats enough for 2 people. He eats enough for 2 people. In this sentence, we're talking about someone's regular habit or regular activity. So someone who eats a lot of food, we could express that with he eats enough for 2 people. This means he eats so much food that the amount of food he eats could feed 2 people. That's what this means. Okay, so as you can see, we can use lots of different verb forms with enough. And again, this use talks about the degree of the action. So in this case, drinking an adequate amount, or sleeping an adequate amount, working or eating, and so on. We're talking about the degree of an action. Okay? I want to make one more point before we get to the last part of the lesson. I want to mention there's this one other expression that we commonly use with enough, and there are other expressions with enough, but this one is very common, so I want to include it in this lesson. It is this expression, fair enough. Fair enough. So this is maybe kind of similar to part 2 that we talked about before, but we don't quite use it in the same way. We use fair enough in conversations to mean, all right, that's reasonable. All right, that's reasonable. When we're having a discussion and sharing opinions usually, and the other side makes a good point, you might hear someone say, oh, fair enough, which sounds like that's reasonable, or that makes sense, okay. So you might hear fair enough used in a lot of different situations. So I wanted to include that here. Okay, let's go to the last part then. So we have our verbs. Let's take a look at how we make some questions with this grammar. So first, have you had enough to drink? Have you had enough to drink? So have you had enough to drink means have you had an adequate amount to drink? So in other words, are you thirsty? This is another way to ask, are you thirsty? But it's less direct. Have you had enough? It sounds like, do you want some more? This is another way of asking this kind of question. Or have you had enough to eat is another very common one, especially from the host of a dinner party to their guests. Have you had enough to eat? Can I bring you something else? Are you okay? These are all expressions that we use to check in with other people. Let's look at one more. Are you exercising enough these days? Are you exercising enough these days? Here we have a progressive verb, yeah? Are you exercising enough? So that means right now, like in part of your maybe daily schedule or part of your regular exercise habits, is this going on for you? So we use this progressive form to do that. Are you exercising enough? So an appropriate or an adequate amount these days. And you can see here, are. It starts with are. That's our big hint that it's a yes or no question. Are you exercising enough these days? Yes, I'm exercising enough. Or no, I'm not. I'm lazy. So we can use different verb forms in our questions as well. Again, the key with this use of enough is that we're talking about the degree of an action. So I hope that this lesson helped you understand the different uses of enough with different parts of speech. As you can see, we have to think about the placement of the word, of course, and we also need to think about these grammatical issues too, like countable and uncountable nouns. But with practice and with time, this will become easier. Also, keep in mind, all of these uses of enough refer to an adequate or an appropriate amount of something. So in this one, with the nouns, an appropriate amount or number of something. In this one, an appropriate quality of something. And here, an appropriate degree of an action. So this might be a good keyword to keep in your mind when you think about enough, thinking about the level of something. How appropriate or not is that? Okay, that is everything for this lesson. I hope that it was helpful for you in understanding how to use this word. If you have any questions or comments, or if you want to practice making some example sentences with this information, please feel free to do so in the comment section of this video. Also, if you like this lesson, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Also, check us out at EnglishClass101.com for some other things that can help you with your English studies. Thanks very much for watching this lesson, and I will see you again soon. Bye! Hi everybody, my name is Alicia. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about how to use capital letters in English. This lesson is going to cover the very basic ways that we use capital letters in English. There are many, many different rules to think about, but these are the most important, so let's take a look. Okay, first, I want to take a look at this part of the board. This part of the board includes what are called proper nouns. A proper noun is different from a regular noun, so not a proper noun, because a proper noun refers to the specific name of a person, the name of a place or the name of a thing. So when we use a proper noun in our writing, we always need to capitalize the words in the proper nouns. So let's start with some very simple and easy examples. When we write the names of people, their first name, their middle name, their last name, we always capitalize the first letter in the name, in the first part of the name, and the first part of the second name and third name and fourth name if they have many names. We always capitalize the first letter. For example, Barack Obama. We capitalize the B in Barack and the O in Obama. We can do the same thing for an artist name. So in this case, I have the performer Lady Gaga. So her performance name is Lady. We put the L as a capital letter, and the G in Gaga is also a capital letter. So even if it's not the person's real name, we still use the same rule for a performer's name. Here's one more. Popular actor Tom Cruise. We use capital T for Tom and capital C in Cruise. So you can do the same thing with your name. When you write your name, make sure you always use a capital letter for the first letter of your name. So first name, middle name, last name, and of course, if you have many names, make sure to use a capital letter for each of those as well. Okay, let's move on to the next group. So we also use this rule for the names of places. And when I say places, I mean a lot of different types of place. For example, cities, countries, streets, neighborhoods, and so on. So if there's a specific name for the place where you live or the place where you're going, we use that with a capital letter. However, it's important to note when I say places, I don't mean type of building. So for example, supermarket or bank, these don't get capital letters. Those are just general place types. When we talk about the name of a place, we use this rule. So let's look at some examples. First, San Francisco. San Francisco. This is a city name. So the S in San and the F in Francisco get capitalized. San Francisco. The next one, Amsterdam, is a city name as well. We put a capital A in Amsterdam. Next, one more city name. This is Rio de Janeiro. Rio de Janeiro. You'll notice here, perhaps, the R is capital and the J is a capital. This little d, though, is not. So this is one, and we'll see this later, this is one kind of exception to this capitalization rule, and we'll see this in some other examples later. These very small connecting words, like prepositions, for example, and conjunctions, we generally do not capitalize these words even when they're part of a proper noun. We'll see more examples of this later. But this is one example in a city name. We typically don't capitalize that little d. We capitalize the R and the J. So these connecting words typically don't become big letters. Okay, next one is another country, Thailand. Thailand, the T here is capitalized. And here's one example of a street. I have First Street. So when you write the name of a street, we typically use, in this case it's just a number, but we use a capital letter here, and we use a capital letter before the street name. You might also see this with avenue, for example, like First Avenue. You might see first also written as F-I-R-S-T. In that case, you would use a capital F in first. So we follow this capitalization rule for names of places, big places and small places. Okay, let's move on to the next group. The next group is names of organizations. Names of organizations. What is an organization here? Organizations, for example, this means companies, schools, government offices, and so on. So when you talk about a brand, for example, if you want to talk about your favorite clothing brand, your favorite accessories brand, and so on, we use the company category for that. It follows this kind of capitalization rule. So let's look at some examples of this. First one, the University of Washington. The University of Washington. Here we have the first letter capitalized, the U in university. This little of is not capitalized. Like we saw in Rio de Janeiro, these little connection words, we typically do not make them capital. We don't make the first letter capital. And finally, Washington, the W here. So the key words are capitalized. Okay, Here, our next example is Microsoft. Microsoft. This is a company name. When we write Microsoft in text, we always write it with a capital letter. So, Microsoft. Other companies get the same treatment. When we write the name of the company, like Google or Apple and so on, we use a capital letter here. Okay, next, Metropolitan Museum of Art. Metropolitan Museum of Art. So this is an organization. Perhaps it's also the name of a place too. Maybe there's an organization with the same name. But we have capital letters, Metropolitan Museum and Art. And again, we have this little of. We don't need to capitalize the O here. So again, we're capitalizing the key words in the name. Finally, we have National Public Radio. National Public Radio. This is the name of an organization. All the letters, the first letters, are capital, NPR. You might also hear this called. So we follow this capitalization rule for organization names. Schools means elementary schools, it means universities, high schools, colleges, technical schools, and many different government offices. It can mean artistic organizations and so on. If you're not sure, if you find something online you want to write about and you're not sure, just try to Google that thing. Look for the home page, and usually on the home page you can find the way they write their organization name. So if you're not sure, that's a really good way to check. Okay, let's move on to our next one. The next category is titles of artistic works. Titles of artistic works. Again, the important words here. This one is maybe the most important one to consider in terms of not capitalizing the small words. But first, what does artistic work mean? An artistic work means movies, music, books, other types of literature, something artistic, something creative that someone has created, a sculpture, a painting, and so on, art pieces. So the names, the titles of artistic works are also capitalized. For example, War and Peace. War and Peace. This is a very famous book. So war, W is capitalized. Peace is also capitalized. Again, notice this and, this connecting word is not capitalized. So again, the important words, as we've seen a few times so far. We capitalize these big key words in the title. Next one, The Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings. So this is a very popular book series and a very popular movie series, and there's also merchandise. So we have T, L, and R capitalized here. Again, the key words. These two, of and the, are not capitalized. Again, these kind of just give us some connection here. You might think, well, why is this T capitalized, but this T isn't capitalized? We always capitalize the first letter. That's a good guideline to have. We're always going to capitalize the first letter in something. But generally, when we have these other ones, these other the, or maybe us in our titles of artistic works, we do not capitalize them. Okay, next one, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. This is a very famous story for kids. Again, we have our capital letters for the key words. Our little preposition does not need a capital letter. Just the A in Alice, the A in Adventures, and the W in Wonderland. So again, if you're not sure how you should capitalize your artistic work, a Google search is usually a really good way to see the correct way to capitalize it. Okay, let's move on to the other side of the board now. The other side has some general tips for other things aside from proper nouns and the names of works, the names of organizations. So, other things you should always make sure to capitalize are days, months, and holidays. So, for example, Tuesday, that's a day of the week. We always capitalize days of the week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Always make sure to capitalize those words. Our months, in this case, I have September as the example. Always capitalize the months of the year. April, May, June, all of those should be capitalized when you write them. Next, holidays. We have Labor Day and Halloween here as examples. Labor Day is two words, but we capitalize both of the first letters, L in labor and D in day. So if you have a holiday in your country as well that has more than one word in it, make sure you use a capital letter for the first letter of each word. Halloween, again, the H in Halloween is capitalized. So when you talk about these holidays, days of the week, and months, make sure you use those capital letters. Okay, lastly, the very last point, make sure to capitalize the first letter in a sentence. Always capitalize the first letter in your sentence. For example, I went to the store. The I is capitalized. He wrote a message. The H is capitalized. They left. Very short sentence, but the T still has to be capitalized to be correct. So make sure always, always, always you capitalize the first letter in a sentence. So you might think to yourself though, but I see on social media all the time, people don't use capital letters. Some people never use capital letters. What's that? On social media, the rules are a bit different. On social media, we're not so strict. We often forget, or we often make mistakes, or we often just don't care about writing exactly perfectly. Or for some people, it's just their style. But if you want to make absolutely sure to always write correctly, you should follow these basic rules for capitalization. So make sure you always start with a capital letter. You might also think to yourself, well, sometimes I go to websites and it seems like they have capital letters used for the important words. Like if I'm looking for something to buy, it seems that they capitalize the key words about the product. And yes, that's also something that some companies and some organizations choose to do. They want to try to make the product stand out, or they want to make keywords stand out more. But technically, this is incorrect to do. It's just, again, one person or one organization's style. And to write correctly, you should make sure not to do that. But this is the reason that you might see these kinds of things. So this is a very good, very general, and very basic guide to the fundamental, the most basic ways to capitalize in English. As I said at the beginning of this lesson, there are many, many, many other rules and many other things to consider, but these are probably the most important and the ones you will use every single day. So I hope this lesson helped you understand when and how to use capital letters in English. Of course, if you have any questions or comments, or if you want to practice making some capitalized sentences in English, feel free to do so in the comment section of this video. Also, if you like this lesson, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Also, check us out at EnglishClass101.com for some other things that can help you with your English studies. Thanks very much for watching this lesson, and I will see you again soon. Bye! Hi everybody, my name is Alicia. In this video, I'm going to talk about 8 ways to use the preposition for. Let's get started. Okay, the first use is purpose. So we use for to express the purpose or the use of something. We can use this to talk about places, the purpose of a place, the purpose of an object, and so on. So let's look at some examples. First, this textbook is for my science class. So here, for is before my science class. In this sentence, this textbook, our subject, matches with my science class. So we show that the use or the purpose of the textbook, the thing that the textbook is used for, or the thing that the textbook is used to do, is my science class. In this case, we're not talking about an action, we're talking about an object and the thing the object is used for, the thing that the object is used to do. So in this case, to study for my science class. Okay, let's look at another example. The conference room is for meetings. So here we have for before meetings. This shows the purpose of the conference room is meetings. This is another way to understand this sentence. Again, we have our subject here, the conference room, and the part following for, which shows the use of the subject. So we can kind of think of these two parts of these sentences as kind of a pair, kind of matching. So the thing and the thing that it is used to do. Okay, one more. Here's an idea for a new product. Here's an idea for a new product. So this sentence is expressing a new product as like the purpose of the idea. So we can think of this in like brainstorming sessions as well. So when you think of, in this case, a new idea or a new concept, you are sharing your concept and the purpose of that concept at the same time. So here's an idea for a new product. So this is expressing the purpose of the idea or the use of the idea in this case. So these are some different ways that we express the purpose or the use of something with for. Okay, let's continue to the second use of for this lesson. The second use is duration. So duration means length of time. Let's look at the examples here. First, he has lived here for 6 years. He has lived here for 6 years. So please note, when you use this for, you need to use the plural form of the, in this case, years that follows. So when we use our time measurement, like year or hour, minute, second, and so on, we need to use the plural form here, as long as it's not one. Of course, if it's 1 year, we need to use just the singular form. But generally, we need to use the plural form in sentences like these that express a duration of time, a length of time. So we cannot use to here. He has lived here 6 years is incorrect. For is used to talk about the length of time. Let's look at the next example sentence. They talked for 2 hours. They talked for 2 hours. Again, we have for before our duration, our length of time, and we're using the plural form, 2 hours. Okay, so they talked for 2 hours. This means their discussion was a 2-hour time period. That was the duration of their talk. Okay, one more example of this. We waited for about 15 minutes. We waited for about 15 minutes. Here we have for before about 15 minutes. So if you want to make a guess or express something close to this time, you can use about in this position. Don't put about before this. We waited about for 15 minutes. No, don't do that. Put it before the duration of time. We waited for about 15 minutes is perfect. So we can use for to talk about duration as well. It's usually very clear when we are using for to describe duration because there's this kind of length of time expression after the preposition. Okay, great. So let's continue to the next use of for. The next use of for, number 3, describes a status or a condition. We use this for a lot when we want to express an emotion that we feel, but for someone else. So sometimes we feel, happy or sad or excited about someone else's news, and we use for to express that. So let's break down these example sentences. First one, very, very common expression. I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy for you. So this sentence means I feel very, very happy because of something that happened in your life. So we do not use to express this. Sometimes I see learners say something like, I'm so happy to you, but we do not express it in this way. We say, I'm so happy for you. You got a new job, I'm so happy for you. So expressing with for you shows that you care about the other person's condition or status. You have this emotion and you want to express it for that other person. Use for to do that. Let's look at another example of this. This is great news for the company. This is great news for the company. So again, we have kind of this status or this condition. Something happened. This is great news for the company. So in this case, we want to express this condition is true for this organization in this case. So maybe the CEO says this is great news for the company. So this means that this condition or this status is something that we want to make clear is for this, kind of the destination of this feeling or this condition is the company. So it's not me, but it's the company. I feel this way, but it's about the company. So we use for to do this. Again, not to. This is great news for the company. Okay, one more example of this. The lecture was hard for the students to understand. The lecture was hard for the students to understand. So in this situation, here is kind of the status or the condition, maybe the opinion in this case. The lecture was hard. And here we have for the students. So that means in this case, maybe the lecture was not hard for the professor, or the lecture was not hard for the teacher. But we want to, again, show this condition should be applied to this group, in this case, the students. The lecture was hard for the students to understand. Maybe the lecture was easy for another professor to understand, but we want to focus on this group here. We use for to do that. The lecture was hard for the students to understand. So again, this use, number 3, to express a status or condition is something that we do when we want to express like an opinion or a condition or an emotion, and we want to be specific about the person or the organization or the group of people that we want to apply that emotion to or that condition to. Okay, so with that in mind, let's continue on to number 4. We're going to change the feel a lot with number 4. Number 4 is old-fashioned because. So yes, this is an old-fashioned use, and we don't use this so much in everyday communication. However, you may see this and you may hear this in media and in stories. It is still used, especially in older stories that are still very, very famous stories. So let's take a look at some examples and see how this is used. So, first one is a sad one, but he remembers that day, for it was a sad day. He remembers that day, for it was a sad day. In this sentence, we can replace for with because, and the sentence stays the same. He remembers that day because it was a sad day. Okay, so here, for 100% replaces because, but the difference is that this sentence sounds much more old-fashioned. We would not say this sentence in everyday communication now unless we want to express a kind of old-fashioned or maybe very dramatic feel. So this is 100% the same meaning, but just sounds older. Let's look at another example. They walked home quickly, for the night was cold and dark. So here we have, they walked home quickly, for the night was cold and dark. Again, we can just replace for with because, and the sentence is the same. They walked home quickly because the night was cold and dark. This is a much more natural sentence in today's modern English, but using for here makes it sound older, much older. Okay, last example. She went into the town, for she had many errands to attend to. She went into the town, for she had many errands to attend to. Again, exactly the same as because. She went into the town because she had many errands to attend to. So I wanted to include this because even though we don't use it so much in everyday communication now, we do still see this from time to time, and you might think, for? Is this about purpose here? And this expresses the same meaning as because. So if you like watching old movies, you might hear this expression quite often, so keep an ear out for it. And of course, if you like to read old books, you will probably see this a lot. So that's what it means. Okay, let's continue to number 5. Number 5, I think, is a pretty easy one to understand. We use for to express the recipient of something, the person who gets something or the person who receives something. So let's look at the examples here. The boy drew a picture for his mother. The boy drew a picture for his mother. So here, for comes before his mother. She is the person who received the picture. So it's like saying the reason someone did something is for giving it to this person or in order to give it to this person. We describe the recipient with for, or we preface the recipient with for. Next example, I bought this coffee for you. I bought this coffee for you. So again, we have for before the person receiving. So in this case, the coffee. Oh, I bought this coffee. Okay, great. For you. So we can do this to express who is receiving something. One more. Flowers for me? How nice. So we can also do this to talk about ourselves when we receive something. In this case, the person receives some flowers. Flowers for me. So that's this part right here is expressing, oh my gosh, I'm the recipient of the flowers. We're expressing some surprise here with this. For me, oh my gosh, how nice. So we do use this for to express the recipients of things. This is just one way to express this giving and receiving type of pattern. Of course, there are many ways to express that someone gave something or received something. This is just one pattern you can use to talk about this giving-receiving relationship. Okay, great. Let's continue on to number 6. Number 6 is also, I think, a pretty easy one to understand quickly because it uses numbers. We use for to express prices and rates and sales and discounts, these kinds of things. So let's look at some examples. First one, I got this shirt for $20. I got this shirt for $20. For is before the price of the item. In this case, I got this shirt for $20. Another way to say this is, I bought this shirt and the price was $20. But for $20 is a very quick and short way to say it. Yeah? Okay, let's look at the next example. This is an example of a discount expression. The electronics store is having a 2-for-1 sale. The electronics store is having a 2-for-1 sale. Here is the 4 I want to focus on. This is an expression that you might see in any kind of store you can imagine, actually. A 2-for-1 sale, maybe 3-for-1, I don't know. But this means you can get 2 objects, in this case markers, in this example, 2 for the price of 1. So this means if a marker costs $1, you can get 2 markers for $1. So you can buy 2 items for the price of 1 item. We express this very quickly with 2 for 1 or 3 for 1 and so on. So this expresses the price of an item or the discount rate in this case. Okay, let's look at one more example. The hotel gave us bags for free. The hotel gave us bags for free. So when something costs $0, when something costs nothing, we express that with free, right? Something is free. When you want to talk about something you received for no money, you use for to do that. We got this for free. She got that for free. So use for to describe those things that cost nothing as well. So you can use for in this way to talk about prices, rates, sales, and so on. Okay, great. Let's move on to the last 2 points for this lesson. The last 2 points I want to talk about are kind of more grammatically focused. So it's not so much about the meaning, but rather the grammatical purpose of the preposition. So we use the preposition for with gerund. So if you don't know what a gerund is, that's when you take a verb, you take the verb and you use it in the ing form, but you use it as a noun. When we do this, we use for before that word. So what does that mean? What does that look like? Let's look at some examples. Here's one. This part of the computer is for storing data. This part of the computer is for storing data. Here we have for plus storing. Storing, so to store means to keep something, like in a computer, data in a computer. So we use this for ing pattern. You might also know the infinitive pattern, something, something, something to verb. That's a very common thing that we maybe run into questions about. Should I use the infinitive form? Should I use the gerund form? And one error I sometimes see is learners try to mix the two. They say like, for store data or to storing data, something like that. So the rule is please use for with gerund. So don't try to mix like for store or to storing, something like that. Make sure when you're using the gerund form here, you precede it with for. Let's look at another example. A sharp knife is important for cutting vegetables. A sharp knife is important for cutting vegetables. So here is my gerund for cutting vegetables. And we have for before this, okay? So a sharp knife is important for cutting vegetables. So another point that I want to make is that we can sometimes use either the gerund form or the infinitive form. And depending on the verb, we can choose between the two. Sometimes both are totally fine to use. Sometimes you need to use one or the other. And in those cases, in the cases where you can choose either one, it's up to you. But you kind of may tend to notice that these sentences are they have kind of the feeling of explaining something to someone. So we maybe don't use these so much unless we want to kind of teach someone how to do something, or we're describing the steps in a process like these two. We're teaching someone about computer maybe building or something like that. Or in this one, we're talking about how to cook something or maybe basic cooking techniques. So you might find that these are used a little bit more when we're instructing someone. So it's a little bit more professional maybe, or a little bit more polite. So depending on the situation, you may also hear some different people making different choices with their grammar. But just be aware of the differences between the two, and that sometimes we can use both the gerund form or the infinitive form. Anyway, let's continue to the last one. GPS tags are used for tracking wild animals. GPS tags are used
for tracking wild animals. Here's tracking, for tracking. So tracking, to track something, means to regularly check the position of something. Like on your phone, right? You can do GPS tracking of your position, hopefully at any time. So GPS tags are used for tracking wild animals. Again, we have kind of this feeling that someone is explaining something new to us with this sentence. So this is one very, very common use of for. Again, this is a more grammatically focused use of for, so we don't need to think about it so much like a specific meaning, but a general feel that we have when we're using it in front of a gerund is that we're talking about the use of something, and we're kind of explaining that use of something, sometimes to someone who's learning for the first time. Okay, so with that in mind, let's go to our last very quick point, number 8. I wanted to include some questions, some key questions that use for to ask about the purpose of something. So, for example, this is a very common one. What for? What for? This question means why. So for example, if someone asks you for something really strange, like they say, hey, can you buy me a drill at the store? You might think, what for? So a drill is something that you use for construction projects. And you might think, what? Why? Another way to ask that question is what for? This is kind of like saying, what is the purpose of that thing? Or for what purpose do you need that thing? So these are different ways that we can ask that why question. It's also kind of like saying, what are your plans for that object? So if someone asks you for something surprising, you can respond with, what for? So you want to know more about what they're going to do. So there are a couple of other patterns that we commonly use this with. So generally, you might hear this what something something for type question, and we can substitute a couple of different phrases in the middle here. But I want to introduce two that are very, very common. The first one that follows this pattern is, what do you need that for? What do you need that for? So again, in the drill example, it's like, what do you need that for? So what is the reason that this is necessary for you? You're asking for the purpose, some kind of explanation. And another one, a past tense one, what did you do that for? What did you do that for? So in this case, it's a past tense thing. We're surprised by someone's actions. What did you do that for? Tell me the purpose of that action. What was the purpose of that action? So you might see these what something something for questions, and these are asking for a reason or a purpose for something. So this is another way to use for. All right, that is everything that I want to cover in this lesson. We talked about many different meanings, and we also looked at some grammatical uses of the word for. So I hope that you got a good refresher about how to use this preposition. But of course, if you have any questions or comments, or if you want to practice making some example sentences, please feel free to do so in the comment section of this video. Also, don't forget to like this lesson and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, check us out at EnglishClass101.com for some other things that can help you with your English studies. Thanks very much for watching this lesson, and I will see you again soon. Bye! Hi everybody, my name is Alicia. In this video, I'm going to talk about 6 ways to use the word as. Let's get started. Okay, the first use I want to talk about is to show the role or the purpose of someone or something. We often use this as before job titles or other roles in our community, in our company, or in an organization. We can also use this as to express the way we use something or the purpose of something. Let's look at some examples. First, a job example. He's been working as a salesman for about 6 years. He's been working as a salesman. So this as comes before the job title. And in this case, we have our article before salesman. He's been working as a salesman for about 6 years. So we do this to show the person's role. We do the same thing in our second example sentence. She was hired as the new creative director. She was hired as the new creative director. So in this case, we have as the new
creative director. So this is the job title, creative director, and we have new to show it's a new position or a new role. We also have the here. So the shows that there's just one creative director. She was hired as the new creative director. As comes before all of this. This is one phrase expressing this new role. Okay, now let's look at this use of as to talk about a purpose. So this room can be used as a meeting room or as a break room. This room can be used as a meeting room or as a break room. So in this case, we are talking about the purpose of a room. So a multi-purpose room. We can use this room for many different things. In this case, we can use this room as, so for the purpose of a meeting room or as a break room. So this shows the different functions or the different purposes. So we can use as in this way to express our roles, our jobs, and the ways that we use different things. Okay, so with this in mind, let's continue to use number 2, which is quite different. Use number 2 is as to mean while or to mean at the same time. So in this case, we have two things occurring at about the same point in time, and we want to express that. So first example here, they arrived as we were leaving. So these two actions are they arrived, past tense, as we were leaving. So this means maybe we're in the process or we were in the process of leaving. We were still there, but we were just about to go. So we connect these with as to show that these two situations or these two actions happened at about the same time. So we can think of this as kind of like while or at the same time. Let's look at the second example. The fire alarm started ringing as we sat down in the restaurant. The fire alarm started ringing as we sat down in the restaurant. So again, we're showing two actions happening at about the same time. So the fire alarm started ringing at the same time as we sat down at the restaurant. So we use as to do this. Please note we cannot replace as with while here. For example, the fire alarm started ringing while we sat down in the restaurant. We wouldn't use it in this way. While we tend to use with progressive actions that are happening at the same time. So we tend to use while when we talk about two continuing actions happening at the same time. We're seeing in these situations, in these cases, we have a simple past tense action and a progressive action. Same thing here, a simple past tense action and a progressive action. So we don't use as and while in exactly the same way, but they do communicate the same feeling of two things happening at about the same time. Okay, let's look at the last example. She smiled as she walked across the stage. She smiled as she walked across the stage. So in this case, we have, again, a simple past tense action. And in this one, the second part, we also have a simple past tense action. So in this sentence, we might hear some people using while in place of as in she smiled while she walked across the stage. That's because these parts match in terms of the grammar, in terms of the tense used. But me personally, I think I would probably still use as in this case instead of while, because while sounds a little more natural if we use it with the continuous or the progressive form. So for example, she was smiling while she was walking across the stage. Might sound a little bit more natural. But in this case, I would use as to mean these two things happened at the same time. Okay, great. So we have our first two uses showing the role of someone or the purpose of something. And we have two things happening about the same time, or the two things happened at about the same time. Let's go to use number 3 now. So use number 3 is to express a cause and a result. So in this use, we are connecting some kind of action and that expresses the cause of something, and then we also see the outcome or the result of that thing. I want to note that this use is a little bit formal. It may even sound a little bit old-fashioned, but we do still use it from time to time, so it's important to understand this use. So let's look at the examples. First, he went to bed early as he had an important meeting in the morning. He went to bed early as he had an important meeting in the morning. So here we have our two independent ideas.
He went to bed early. One, this is the action. As he had an important meeting in the morning. This is the cause of this result, okay? So we have the reason for something. You can think of this as in the same way as because, right? He went to bed early because he had an important meeting in the morning. So typically in today's English, we use because a lot in this position. But every once in a while, we maybe want to sound a little more formal or a little old-fashioned. Every once in a while, we use as to express the same idea. Again, we have this cause and result relationship. Let's look at the next example. She prepared a mountain of food as she was expecting many guests at her party. She prepared a mountain of food as she was expecting many guests at her party. So again, we have this cause-result relationship. She prepared a mountain of food. This is the result, the outcome. And why? She was expecting many guests at her party. This is the cause. So again, we can think of this as meaning because. She prepared a lot of food because she was expecting a lot of guests at her party. So as expresses the same idea. Okay, let's look at the last example for this group. They decided to move to a bigger house as they were planning to have a family. They decided to move to a bigger house as they were planning to have a family. So again, we have this result and the cause. So again, we have this because type meaning here. They decided to move to a bigger house because they were planning to have a family. So again, although we use because a lot more in today's English, sometimes people still choose to use this as to connect their ideas that express the cause and the result of something. So it's good to know this one. Okay, great. Let's continue to number 4. Number 4 is very interesting. We use this use of as to express two changes happening at the same time. So this is a bit different from point number 2. I talked about two things that happen at about the same time, two separate actions. The key here with number 4, though, is that two things are changing at the same time. For example, two things are increasing or two things are decreasing, or maybe one thing is increasing and the other thing is decreasing at the same time. The key with this use is change, and we'll also see there are some specific grammar patterns we tend to use with this type of as. So let's take a look. First one, as you get older, it gets harder and harder to lose weight. As you get older, it gets harder and harder to lose weight. So this is expressing as you get older, so as your age increases. We are talking about one change here. And then it gets harder and harder. So it gets more and more difficult. It becomes more and more difficult to lose weight. So the difficulty increases. So we're talking about one point, increasing in age as you get older, and the other thing, trying to lose weight or getting more and more difficult to lose weight. So we're expressing two changes happening at the same time. We also see this as something, something, comma, it gets comparative, comparative. This is another common pattern that we see with this type of as use. We'll see another example in number 2 here. So let's read it. The air got colder and colder as we climbed up the mountain. The air got colder and colder as we climbed up the mountain. So again, we have two things changing. One, the air gets colder and colder. So it means the air is becoming cold, right? We do this repetition for emphasis. The air got colder and colder is thing 1, changing. 2, as we climbed up the mountain. So we are going up the mountain, climbing up the mountain. These two things, these two changes are happening at the same time. We express this, we connect these ideas with and. So this sentence follows the same kind of pattern as the first one, but we can move this as section to the end of the sentence. In this case, I could say, as we climbed up the mountain, the air got colder and colder, and it's still 100% correct. It's up to you to choose which part you want to emphasize. Generally, the part at the beginning of the sentence is going to sound like it has a little bit more emphasis. So you can choose which position is best for you. Okay, let's look at one more example. As airline ticket costs increase, the number of people traveling decreases. So again, we have two things changing here. As airline ticket costs increase, as they go up, the number of people traveling decreases. So in this case, we have changes in two directions. Costs increase, travelers decrease. The number of travelers decrease. We express that these two changes are happening at the same time with this as pattern. So a good way to know that this is the one that's being used is that this as will come at the beginning of this sentence as an introductory clause, like this as something something, comma, that's a good hint, plus this comparative form, harder and harder or colder and colder. That's one big hint that this is the changes at the same time kind of as. So keep in mind that this one, again, is used to express changes happening at the same time. The one we talked about in number 2 expresses two actions that happened sometimes in the past, or sometimes they happened or they were happening at the same time, but not just changes. So that's the key difference between 2 and 4. Okay, great. So let's continue to the last 2 points. The last 2 points are some basic grammar review points. So number 5, we use as for comparison. So this is a very basic English grammar point, but let's review it very quickly because sometimes people, I think, forget parts of these sentences. So we use as in a couple of different patterns. We use as to express that two things are equal with this pattern. So noun A is as adjective or sometimes adverb as noun B, right? So this thing is as something as noun B. Or we can also express a comparison with a negative, not as something, okay? So A is not as adjective as B, for example. So we use this as pattern to describe things that are equal and to make some comparisons. So let's review with a couple of examples. First, your house is as big as a celebrity's house. Your house is as big as a celebrity's house. So that's like saying your house is the same size as a celebrity's house. Maybe it's really big, right? So the problem sometimes we see, I think maybe learners get a little bit confused about as and than, right? So we use than a lot when we make comparisons, like your house is bigger than my house, for example. But when we want to show that two things are equal, we use this as around our adjective, no than here, okay? So use this to express that two things are equal. Noun 1, your house. Noun 2, celebrity's house. Connect them to show they are equal with as big as, okay? Great. Let's look at a couple more examples. Second, this taco shop is not as good as the one in our neighborhood. So this is a negative, right? This taco shop is not as good as the one in our neighborhood. So in this sentence, this taco shop here, not as good, lower quality than the taco shop in our neighborhood, right? We show this relationship with not as good as, okay? Again, we have as on both sides of the adjective here. We do not use than in this sentence. Okay, let's look at our last example. The weather today is not as bad as it was yesterday. The weather today is not as bad as it was yesterday. Again, this means today's weather is not as bad as it was yesterday. So another way to express this, yesterday's weather was really, really terrible. Today's is okay. So again, we're following the adjective with as here. So as on both sides. So keep in mind that this is a very common pattern for as. Okay, let's finish off this lesson with point number 6. So point number 6, I wanted to focus on this expression, as long as, because I think it's sometimes very confusing. What does this mean? Does this have to do with length? Sometimes, yes, we can use this in this pattern, actually. Like this marker is as long as that marker, which means they are of equal length. However, we have this as long as expression, which means only if. It acts as part of a conditional expression. So let's look at some examples of this. First, as long as I save money for 6 months, I'll be able to buy a car this year. As long as I save money for 6 months, I'll be able to buy a car this year. So what does this mean? As long as I save money for 6 months. So we can understand this as only if. Only if I save money for 6 months, I'll be able to buy a car this year. That means I must do this thing. I must do this thing in the as long as clause in order to make this thing possible, okay? In order to make this main clause possible. I'll be able to do this thing.
okay? So we use as long as to mean only in this case, all right? So you'll notice this comes at the beginning of the sentence, at least if this clause is first, okay? So let's take a look at another position that we see as long as used in. 2. You can go to the party as long as you finish your homework. You can go to the party as long as you finish your homework. So in this case, we have our main clause here. You can go to the party as long as, or only if, you finish your homework. So this is something a parent might say to a child, right? So again, only if you finish your homework. That's what as long as expresses here. All right, let's finish up the last example sentence. We'll arrive at the airport on time as long as there's no traffic. Okay, once more. We'll arrive at the airport on time as long as there's no traffic. So again, we can replace as long as with only if to understand this. We'll arrive at the airport on time only if there's no traffic, right? Only in this situation, or only if this is true, right? So this is the use of as long as. We understand this as only if, and I hope that this helps you to see the different positions in the sentence that as long as takes in comparison to the comparative form of as long as. So pay attention to the location of as long as to help you understand whether it's a comparison or it's an only if construction. Okay, great. So those are 6 different ways to use the word as. They are very different. There are many very different uses of as, but I hope that this lesson gave you a good introduction to the various ways that we can put as into our sentences. So of course, if you have any questions or comments, or if you want to practice making some example sentences with the word as, please feel free to do so in the comment section of this video. Also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Also, don't forget to check us out at EnglishClass101.com for some other things that can help you with your English studies. Thanks very much for watching this lesson, and I will see you again next time. Bye! Hi everybody, my name is Alicia. In this video, I'm going to talk about how to make embedded questions in English. Let's get started. First, let's take a look at what an embedded question even is. What is an embedded question? An embedded question is a question inside another question or inside a sentence. Embedded questions are used to make questions softer or more polite. So in this lesson, I'm going to compare embedded questions, questions that are inside something else, with direct questions. So we can see how we need to change the questions in order to make this inside type of question. So let's start by making these 2 sets. So the first one is this direct question set. So here are some samples of just very, very basic direct questions. What time does the bus leave? What time does the bus leave? Very basic question, information question, right? Or who ate my sandwich? Who ate my sandwich? Again, very simple, basic question. One more, what is the password? What is the password? These are simple, basic, direct questions. Then let's compare this to embedded questions. So let's change these direct questions and put them inside another question or another statement. And let's take a look at what happens to the questions when we do this. So the first direct question was, what time does the bus leave? In an embedded question, for example, we could say, can you tell me what time the bus leaves? Can you tell me what time the bus leaves? So you can see this question, what time the bus leaves, is different from the direct question. What time does the bus leave? We have different word order and different words used here. We're going to talk about why this is in the middle of today's lesson. Let's look for the time being at the second example though. Who ate my sandwich in this direct form? And in the embedded form, do you know who ate my sandwich? Do you know who ate my sandwich? So here we have do you know to introduce the embedded question. And in this case, we have who ate my sandwich. No change. There's a reason for this as well. We'll talk about later. Lastly, what is the password? What is the password? In an embedded question, it might look like this. I'd like to know what the password is. I'd like to know what the password is. So again, this part, the question, what the password is,
This is different from what is the password. So we're going to break down the reasons for these changes and introduce the rules so that you can make your own embedded questions. First, let's start by looking at this type of sentence. What is the password? This is an example of a direct question that uses the verb be. So to be, meaning is, or are, or was, or were. When you have a question that uses the be verb, we need to follow a certain type of rule. And that is, we move the be verb after the subject when we make an embedded question. So for example, when we saw, what is the password? We needed to change that in our embedded question. So the verb comes after the subject. This is what we see here. I'd like to know what the password is. So in this case, the verb comes after the subject, the password. This is the same rule we need to follow for other questions that use the be verb. So let's take a look at 3 more examples. First, where are the car keys? Where are the car keys? Here is my be verb. So we need to move this after the subject to create an embedded question. Here's my sample. Can you tell me where the car keys are? So here is my embedded question. I'm starting the question, can you tell me? And the basic question is here. The direct question is here with the new grammar. Can you tell me where the car keys are? So a very common mistake is learners don't move the be verb to the end or to after the subject. Can you tell me where are the car keys is incorrect. Make sure to move it to the after point, the after subject point. Okay, let's look at the next example. How long is the movie? How long is the movie? Here the be verb is. So we need to move this after the subject. Here's our sample embedded question with this grammar. Do you know how long the movie is? Do you know? Introduces the embedded question. How long the movie is. Again, we moved is from this position before the subject to this position after the subject. One more example of this. Why is the city so polluted? Why is the city so polluted? Polluted means it's filled with maybe dirt, trash, it's poor quality air, and so on. So why is the city so polluted? Again, we have this be verb here, and here's our subject, the city. So here's a sample embedded question. I wonder why the city is so polluted. I wonder why the city is so polluted. So please note, we don't move the be verb always to the end of the sentence. We move it after the subject, like we see here. The city is our subject, so we put it after the subject in this position. I wonder why the city is so polluted. Also, another thing that's important to note that you can see here is that although these are called embedded questions because there's a question inside something else, we don't always need to use a question mark at the end. In this case and in this case, we're asking a question, right? Can you tell me? And do you know? But this one, I wonder. It's like we're thinking about something. I wonder why. This is not a question, so we use a period at the end of this. So keep this in mind. Sometimes it's a question, and we should use a question mark. Sometimes it's not, so just use a period, or maybe an exclamation point. Okay, great. So this is our first point about be embedded questions that use be. Now, let's take a look at another thing we need to consider. That's when our question uses the auxiliary or the helping verb do. So we saw an example of this here. What time does the bus leave? We saw this here. Here's my verb, our auxiliary does. We changed this to, can you tell me what time the bus leaves? So in this part, you might notice there's no does, right? Why is that? That's because of an interesting rule we need to consider. So in these cases, we remove that do or does or did, and we use the verb, the other verb that's in the question. So what does this look like? Here are a couple of quick examples. Our direct question, where did he go? Where did he go? In this case, we have past tense, yeah? Did. Right? And our verb here is go, right? So to follow this rule, we need to remove this auxiliary, this helping word, and we use the verb that's in the question instead. we also need to make sure this change uses the same tense as the original helping verb. So what does this look like? Here's a sample. Do you know where he went? Do you know where he went? So do you know introduces the question. Where he went. We use went because it's the past tense form of the verb that was in the question before. We have no did here. So not, do you know where did he went? Incorrect. That's a very common type of mistake I see with learners. Do you know where he went? It's the perfect way to create this type of embedded question. Let's look at one more example. What time does she start work? What time does she start work? So again, we have does here, does, all right? So we need to remove that, and we have this start in this case. We have the verb start. So what's a sample sentence here? I'm not sure what time she starts work. I'm not sure what time, so we have this part, remains the same, what time she starts work. So we have our verb here matching the tense of the sentence. In this case, this is a present tense sentence, right? So we have the present tense verb structure applied. She starts work, right? So keep in mind, we always have to use the same tense that does is used in the original question, but we have to remove that does and use that tense for the verb that's actually in the sentence. So this one can be a little bit tricky to remember. It's kind of a special grammar point, but this is how we use the do verb rule with embedded questions. Okay, great. So one more quick point about this is if you have a question like this, who ate my sandwich? There's no be verb and there's no do verb. Lucky you, there's no change. So who ate my sandwich? A question like this that doesn't have this verb or this verb doesn't require any change. We can simply use it in the embedded question as it is. Who ate my sandwich? Can be put into the embedded question with no changes. So that's the one that's easy to remember. So be and do questions are the ones you really need to think about. Okay, great. Let's move on to the last part for this lesson. Yes or no questions. So sometimes we have questions that don't have a question word, like who, what, where, when, how long, and so on. These are simple yes or no questions. So if there is no question word in the sentence, you can create the embedded question with whether or if. So if or whether. We start the embedded question with that. So what does that look like? Let's take a look at some very simple examples. Here, are they hungry? Or was he angry? Or is this vegetarian? So none of these have a who, what, where, when, why question, right? Simple yes, no. So how do we make an embedded question with these? First one, are they hungry? Okay, here's a sample question. Let's ask if they're hungry. Let's ask if they're hungry. This is our embedded question. If they are hungry. Yeah? Okay, next one. Was he angry? Was he angry? Do you know if he was angry? Do you know if he was angry? If he was angry, okay? And the third one, is this vegetarian? So meaning, is this food vegetarian? Could you tell me, introduces the question, could you tell me if this is vegetarian? Could you tell me if this is vegetarian? Oh, yes it is, or no it isn't. So keep in mind we can use whether or if, but generally if tends to sound a little bit more casual, a little bit more commonly used in everyday conversation. You may hear people using whether in this position too. Another point to consider, you might have noticed that we changed the be verb position here as well, yeah? So for example, are they hungry becomes they are hungry. And was he angry becomes he was angry, right? So we still have to change the position of the be verb here. And we add this if or whether before the embedded question, okay? So this is another important grammar point to keep in mind. With practice, it becomes easier. And there are some embedded questions that are very, very common. For example, could you tell me where the restroom is? There are some that you will use a lot, and they will become easier over time. So the very last point that I want to make is about these starting phrases here. So these starting phrases we've looked at in today's lesson, These are some examples of phrases we very commonly use to begin our embedded questions. So, for example, do you know? We looked at this earlier many times. Do you know something? Or can or could you tell me? Can you tell me or could you tell me? Could will sound a little bit more polite. Let's ask, or let's find out, or let's see. We can use these as well. We saw this here. Let's ask if they're hungry, or let's find out if they're hungry. Let's see if they're hungry. So this is suggesting, let us do this thing. We want to find out some information. The next one is I wonder. I wonder. We saw this here. I wonder why the city is so polluted. So we can use this to kind of think out loud. And the last two, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. We saw this here. I'm not sure what time she starts work. So we can use this to express some uncertainty. And the last one, I'd like to know. I'd like to know. So when you want to politely request information, I'd like to know what time the bus leaves, and so on. So these are just some examples. There are some more as well, but these are very, very common. So I hope that this lesson helped you understand what embedded questions are, why we use them to sound a little bit more polite or to sound a little bit less direct, and I hope that you are able to make your own embedded questions following the rules we talked about in this lesson. Of course, if you have any questions or comments, or if you want to practice making some sentences with this grammar, please feel free to do so in the comment section of this video. Also, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Also, check us out at EnglishClass101.com for some other things that can help you with your English studies. Thanks very much for watching this lesson, and I will see you again soon. Bye!
Hey everyone, welcome to the Monthly Review, the monthly show on language learning, where you discover new learning strategies, motivational tips, study tools, and resources. By the way, all the lessons and bonuses you're about to see can be downloaded for free on our website. So click the link in the description right now to sign up for your free lifetime account. Okay, today's topic is, your pronunciation is terrible. Is pronunciation important or not? And this is a controversial topic for some. If you're wondering if you should aim for perfect pronunciation or not, be sure to watch this first. You'll discover how to approach pronunciation as a beginner, how to perfect your pronunciation with our program, and much more. But first, if you're looking for new free language resources and downloads, here are this month's new lessons and resources. Be sure to download these now before we take them down in a few days. First, the Talking About Age PDF Conversation Cheat Sheet. This cheat sheet will teach you how to say how old you are, ask others for their age, and learn a whole bunch of age-related words and phrases. Second, master 1,500 words with our printable visual flashcards. Just download, print them out, and review as much as you want. These PDF flashcards are yours to keep for life. To get your free resources, click the link in the description below right now. They're yours to keep forever. And here are this month's updates for our language learning system. If you want to boost your vocabulary and speak more of the language, stay tuned. We're launching the second season of our Core Word series, which will teach you the 2,000 most common words and phrases. And it includes a new review section at the end that'll test you on the words you learned in the lesson. Your pronunciation is terrible. Is pronunciation important or not? Part 1. How to approach pronunciation as a beginner. So, is perfect pronunciation important? This can be a controversial topic, and the answer may depend on personal preference. Some learners prefer to get everything just right. Some learners go for good enough and may revisit pronunciation later. And some, whether they realize it or not, move on with so-so pronunciation and never look back. Where do you fit in? Leave us a comment and let us know. But is there a right answer to this question? For the most part, we all want to say, yes, it is important, and it's hard to argue otherwise. Perfect pronunciation is ideal in an ideal world, but it gets a little complicated in the real world. First, language learning takes time. Second, it's not always easy to develop a perfect accent when you're an adult. So if you're a busy adult, time is something you may not have a lot of. If you want to have perfect pronunciation or something close to it, you'll need to invest a lot more time. And even if you're not a busy adult, you still have to delay progress in speaking while you perfect your pronunciation. This may not be so fun for impatient learners who don't want to sit and drill one thing all day. So it ultimately also becomes a question of, do you want to focus on pronunciation and not really speak much of the language? Or do you want to speak a whole lot of the language with so-so pronunciation? Let us know in the comments. Which do you prefer? Now, if you have all the time in the world to practice, go for perfect pronunciation. If not, then it's up to you how you want to spend your time. But if you're a beginner and you're worried about getting everything right, it's okay to get a basic understanding of the pronunciation and move to other areas of the language. You don't have to get it all right on the first try. Remember, language is a tool we use for communication. If the tool is good enough, and if you can get your point across, that's good enough for now. You can always come back to perfect things later on. But this approach does require some confidence, because there will be times when native speakers won't immediately understand you, and you have to deal with that. Now, what if you do want to improve your pronunciation? Part 2. How you can perfect your pronunciation with our program. First, if you haven't done so already, learn the alphabet. And this tip is only for brand new beginners. Learning the alphabet sets the foundation of your pronunciation. And for this, you can download our free printable alphabet PDF worksheet to master it. Second, check out our pronunciation course in the lesson library. This course should get you good enough at the pronunciation. You'll understand how the language sounds, what the important rules are, and what the most common mistakes are, so you can avoid them. If you're an absolute beginner or a beginner, we recommend you take these lessons. Third, increase your exposure to the target language. And this tip is for learners of all levels, whether you're beginner or intermediate. The more you're exposed to native speech, the more you'll get used to the pronunciation. And as you know, native speakers don't exactly sound like the slow, clean textbook examples you'd learn in most apps. You can do it with our lessons inside the recommended learning pathway, or by listening to music, podcasts, and even watching TV shows in your target language. And this is something you should be doing on a consistent basis. Fourth, use our pronunciation practice tool. You'll find it in the dialogue section of every audio lesson. With this tool, you can listen to the native speaker say a line and record yourself saying the same line, and play the two recordings side by side to see how close you get. The more you do it, the better your pronunciation will get. Fifth, work with a native teacher, because the best judge of your pronunciation will always be a native speaker. With our Premium Plus plan, you can send voice recordings to your Premium Plus teacher and get feedback and corrections. Your native teacher will instantly know where you need adjustment and help you improve. But again, don't worry if you don't get it right away. Good pronunciation comes with practice. And even if you have a not-so-perfect accent, natives will still be able to understand you, and that is good enough. So thank you for watching this episode of Monthly Review. Next time, we'll talk about how to master 500 words with spaced repetition. If you enjoyed these tips, hit the like button, share the video with anyone who's trying to learn a language, and subscribe to our channel. We release new videos every week. And if you're ready to finally learn language the fast, fun, and easy way and start speaking from your very first lesson, get our complete learning program. Sign up for your free lifetime account right now. Click the link in the description. See you next time. Bye! What if you could immerse yourself in everyday conversations in your target language? The small talk, talking about your plans, catching up with friends? With enough immersion, you would comfortably start speaking in that language. How? How to immerse yourself in conversations so you can speak more. Stick around. In this quick guide, you'll discover 1. The best way to immerse yourself with our system, 2. Which tools to use to speed up the language acquisition process, and much more. But first, if you don't yet have access to our language learning system, sign up for a free lifetime account right now. Just click the link in the description to get your free lifetime account. So, here's how you can start learning a language as a busy adult. Immersion is simply surrounding yourself with the language anywhere you get to listen, read, speak, or write in the language, or a combination of a few or all of these skills. The easiest way to start immersing yourself is through listening, and you can do just that with our system. How? When you join, you automatically get a laid-out step-by-step pathway of lessons to follow. And in all those lessons, you learn a quick, practical conversation, whether talking about the weather, your day, your weekend, and much more. Every word and grammar rule is broken down and explained by our teachers, so you understand everything by the end. Now imagine you got to listen to this conversation over and over. You'd know all the words by heart, the grammar would come naturally to you, and you'd be able to speak perfectly. Well, you can do just that with something called the dialogue track. The dialogue track gives you just the conversation of the lesson, no translations, and you can use it to immerse yourself in the target language. So if you're learning with our website, just play the dialogue tracks for immersion. If you're learning with our app, you can set the dialogue tracks on autoplay. Just go into the settings on the app, and in autoplay, make sure autoplay is on. Turn on dialogue, turn off the other tracks, set play next lessons to on, and the app will do the rest for you. Now, immersion and listening to conversations on repeat is a great way to get the language stuck in your brain. But if you want to speed up the process, you can also read along while you listen. By reading along, you're engaging multiple skills and senses, which helps the language stick better. And if you read out loud, you're now practicing speaking. So to read along, just use the lesson transcript, which is 100% free for every lesson. Or the line-by-line dialogue, which breaks down the conversation into individual lines that you can review one by one. But the number one tip is to review often, because the language will only become natural to you after enough exposure. So, if you want to learn the language and get access to these learning tools and our learning system, sign up for a free lifetime account right now. Just click the link in the description to get your free lifetime account. Language apps aside, there are a number of ways you can learn and practice your target language with your smartphone. How? 8 unique ways to learn language with your smartphone. Stick around. In this quick guide, you'll discover 1. How to learn new words fast with your phone, 2. How to practice speaking on your own, and much more. But first, if you don't yet have access to our language learning system, sign up for a free lifetime account right now. Just click the link in the description to get your free lifetime account. So, here's how you can start learning a language with your smartphone. If you're already thinking that getting an app is obvious, you're right. There are hundreds of apps out there, but most only teach you words, which isn't enough if you want to actually speak the language. With innovative language learning, you just press play on a lesson and listen to practical conversations in your target language. You hear real speakers, real voices. And then, our teachers explain all the words and grammar rules from the conversation while you're walking or even driving. Lessons are just a few minutes long, meaning you can learn quite a bit on a 10-minute commute. So download innovative language learning for free for the Android or iPhone. Every day, you get a new word sent directly to your email, and all you have to do is check the meaning, hear the pronunciation, and review the example sentences. This is an effortless way to boost your vocabulary while you're on your phone. Now, this tip is challenging, and you will have to look up words at the start. But once you're over that early learning curve, you'll be able to use your phone in your target language and know all the words that come up. If you're using apps like Pinterest, Instagram, or Tumblr, and you're following language learning accounts, you'll come across pictures and infographics teaching you various words and phrases. If you save those to your phone, you can quickly swipe through them for extra review, kind of like you would with flashcards. You can also download our collection of hundreds of free language infographics and learn in that very same way. All smartphones should come with a voice recorder, which you can use to practice speaking and listen to your own pronunciation. You may not be able to fully judge your speaking, but you can tell if your speaking is fluid or not. You can also send the recordings to native speakers for feedback, if you want. If you're browsing the internet on your phone, chances are you'll come across new words and phrases in your target language. You can copy and paste these into the Notes app, where you can review the word later. Just change the language of your phone and then try asking questions like, how are you? What time is it? And so on. If the voice assistant understands you and replies, then you can be sure you're on the right track. You already listen to music or podcasts on your smartphone, so it makes sense to listen to music and podcasts in your target language, where you can immerse yourself, improve your listening, and pick up new words. You can also subscribe to our free podcasts with any podcast app or service that you have. Just search for our site in your podcast app. And if you want to learn the language with our learning system, sign up for a free lifetime account right now. Just click the link in the description to get your free lifetime account. What's the best way to speak and understand more of the language? Simple. Learn more words. But with all the words in your target language, where do you even start? And if you're a beginner, which words should you learn first? You're about to find out. In this guide, you'll learn 1. All about our 2,000 most common words list. 2. How to start building your vocabulary. And 3. How to learn even faster with special study tools. But first, if you don't yet have access to our language learning system, sign up for a free lifetime account right now. Just click the link in the description to get your free lifetime account. So, let's jump in. I'll guide you through our learning system so you get to see exactly what's inside and our members-only study tools. So what is the 2,000 core word list? Let's take a look at this. The 2,000 core word list is a premium feature on the website. You can access this word list by going to the vocabulary drop-down menu at the top of the page and clicking on 2,000 most common words. That will bring you to this page here, in this case, the English Core 2,000 word list. So the reason that this word list is really helpful is because these are the 2,000 most commonly used words in the language. That means they're the most frequently used words, which means they're also the ones you're going to need the most. So these are words that are related to like daily life activities, to food, drink, travel, your relationships, and so on. So if you want a place to start your studies, this can be a very, very nice place to begin because you're learning words you are going to use right away. So I want to talk a little bit about the different ways that we can use this 2,000 core word list to hopefully make your studies a little bit more efficient. So first, I want to talk about the category function with this word list. So if you look at this box right here, it says category all right now. If you click on this, you will see a bunch of different categories appear. So if you click on one of these, like let's say business, for example, you will find all of the words in this word list that are related to business. In this case, negotiation, contract, business, deal. So you will find all of the words about a specific category inside the category list. So we can go down maybe to clothing and accessories as well. And if you click on that category, you will see all of the words related to clothing. So if you want to study based on a specific category, you can do that with the category tool in this drop-down menu here. So that is one really, really useful way if you know that you need to study a specific thing first. Okay, so that's one really good feature. The second feature that I want to talk about relates to these 100, 200, 300, 400, and so on links at the top of the page. So if we click on these links, we will see lists like this. So this is the English Core 100 word list in this case. So the 100 core word list has broken down that 2,000 core word list into the 100 most common words. So if you want to start with the words that are the most common of the most common used, then you can start with the 100 word list and then go on to 200, 300, and so on. So this core word list will give you the ones that are the most frequent in the language. So like the top words that you need to know. In this case, week, year, today, tomorrow, and so on. So if you want to start with your vocabulary studies and you have no idea where to begin, this is a great place to start yourself. So within this core word list, let's take a look now at some of the different things that we can do and some of the different features related to the specific vocabulary words and phrases here. So let's break down first what's happening with the individual vocabulary words. So let's take a look at this box right here. In this case, we have our vocabulary word, which is week. We have the part of speech listed next to it, the
This is a noun. We have the definition below that here. We have a picture, and this audio icon right here, if we click this, this will give the pronunciation of the vocabulary word. So if you're not sure how to say a vocabulary word, just click this icon and you will hear the pronunciation, so you can listen to that and practice the correct way to say the word. On the right, you'll also see some examples, some example phrases and some example sentences. In this case, this week, and again, we can listen to the pronunciation to practice that, and we can also access some more examples. So now that we know all of the different parts for each vocabulary word or phrase, I want to talk about the different tools that you can use to study these things. So first, I want to talk about the slideshow tool. We can access this. Up here on the right, there is a View Slideshow link. So if we click this, it will bring up the slideshow tool, the vocabulary slideshow tool, which will give us all of the vocabulary words in the list we're looking at right now, and it will go through each of the vocabulary words or expressions, and it will show them to you so you can just look at them, and then you can process the information, do whatever you'd like to do with that. We have a few different things we can select here on this page. We can choose to play the sample sentence audio if we want or not. We can uncheck this too. We can also choose to loop playback or not, which means the words and expressions will continue to play. So let's leave those on for now and click Start Slideshow. So if we do this, we will see the vocabulary words displayed with the definition, we'll see the example, the picture, and so on. So you can change the speed of this slideshow with the tools down here. You can pause if you want to, if this is going pretty quick. This one is going pretty quick. You can go to the next one, you can go to the previous one. You can change the speed with the slow and fast buttons, and you can also adjust the loop settings here. So the vocabulary slideshow is one tool that you can use if you want to just look at all of the words in a given list. So you can control everything from this View Slideshow link up here on the top right. So this is feature number one I want to talk about. The second one I want to talk about, the second feature, is the word bank tool. So the word bank, first, what is the word bank? If we go to the vocabulary drop-down menu at the top, we can find this word bank link right here inside. So click on word bank, and this will give you a big list of words that you have selected for whatever purpose. Maybe you want to make a specific group for some reason, or you just need a list of interesting words or whatever. Many people have different uses for the word bank. It's up to you. But if you want to use this word bank tool, just kind of a place to store things or a place to maybe work on something specific at that moment, you can use the word bank and you can access it here. And you can also add words to that word bank from these core word lists. So there are a couple of ways to do this. You can do this first by clicking on a word that you want to add, let's say week here. We click on this checkbox to the left of the word and go up here to add selected words. In the top right, click on this and select word bank. This will add the word to your word bank, and it will tell you one selected word was added to your word bank. So you can do that here and click OK. If you want to, you can also do this on the individual word by clicking on this little plus mark to the right of the word, and it will pop up here as well. Word bank too. You can do this with multiple words. So if I want to select these three, for example, I can select them and just click Add Selected Words again and send it to word bank. It will again tell me that those words were added to my word bank in this way. So this is one way that you can add vocabulary words to a specific list that you have created. Okay, so now I want to talk about the last item for today, which is flashcards. So how do we use this list to create flashcards? It's very similar to adding to the word bank, very easy. So again, let's use the word week here, and then we'll add selected words again, but in this case, we're going to look at this flashcard deck submenu. So under the flashcard deck submenu, you will see any decks that you currently have on your account, and you can choose to send your new vocabulary word to any of these decks, or you can create a new deck. So I'll create a new deck that's called like Alicia's new deck. For example, click OK, and my vocabulary word will go to my new study deck, my new flashcard deck. We can see it here, Alicia's new deck. So I could click study, and we would go immediately to that new vocabulary deck that I created. So we can do this in this way to add specific words to a specific deck. We can also click this plus mark and choose that same deck from this plus mark on the right side too. So those are the same two ways that we used to add words to the word bank.
So we can add multiple words by clicking on the check boxes to the left of each vocabulary word and clicking Add Selected Words and just choosing the study deck in this way. So if you want to use the flashcards, you can do it very, very simply, very easily, and you can create new decks very easily as well. If you want to add all of the words in the list to either your word bank or to your flashcards, you can do that with this Add All Words link up here at the top. So you can select word bank or you can select a flashcard deck. If you don't want to select any words, you just want to add all of them to a specific study section, you can do that with this Add All Words link up here at the top. So these are a few different ways that you can use the core word list. So that means that you will get all of the words that you need for conversational fluency. It will help you to make sure that you're choosing the words that are actually used a lot. So you're not, using time to study words that aren't so common or to study words that maybe you already know really well. You can specifically choose the ones that you know you need to review. So these are 3 super great tools that you can use. You don't have to worry about memorizing everything all at once. You can just use the spaced repetition tools that we have available on our websites. And if it seems like a lot, you can absolutely just start with the core 100 word list to begin, which is free. But all of the other tools that we've talked about in this video are premium tools, so make sure to check them out. So, if you want to learn the language and get access to these learning tools and our learning system, sign up for a free lifetime account right now. Just click the link in the description to get your free lifetime account. Great work! Here's a reward. Speed up your language learning with our PDF lessons. Get all of our best PDF cheat sheets and ebooks for free. Just click the link in the description.